public meeting of the Mass Gaming Commission at the Convention Center in Springfield, Mass. This is May 12th, 2016, about 10 o'clock a.m. First item on the agenda is always the approval of minutes. Commissioner Donald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the minutes of the meeting of April 25th, 2016 be approved, subject to corrections, typographical errors, or other non-material matters.
Second.
Are you doing the other ones separately?
I was going to.
Yeah, okay, fine, okay. Any discussion about the minutes?
Yeah, I have a question. This may be a typographical, but I'd like to raise it as a question, maybe a discussion. In the portion of the minutes where at 1:42 p.m., it's the third page, when it describes that Mr. Moore stated that there's extensive mitigation and in many cases exceeds the minimum standard. The word minimum here may be the thing that made me ask whether that was in fact the case. I think the mitigation package exceeds the standards. And I don't know if there's minimum standards, if that's the way MIPA views it, but I just figured I wanted to discuss that.
No, it's a good point. Ombudsman, do you want to speak to that? I think that is the language that MIPA uses, yeah.
But Mr. Moore's testimony is that in his view, if we're referring to the same matter, in his view, this package exceeded mitigation in many other circumstances. I'm not sure the specific reference in the transcript you're referring to, but he specifically stated, to my memory, that this package exceeded many other mitigation packages in his memory.
Yeah, and the point is made in the summary of the discussion. I think it accurately reflects it. I was just struck by the word minimum.
Right.
If there is such thing as optimal standards, and I kind of doubt it. I don't know if that's the way MIPA views the standards.
I think that was Mr. Moore's characterization more than a MIPA characterization
Okay.
of it, yes.
Okay.
But MIPA doesn't have minimum and maximum.
No.
MIPA just has standards,
Yeah.
which are
Which was my
therefore
point.
ipso facto sort of the minimum. But it sounds like this is denigrating the
Yes.
degree of mitigation.
That was my point.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
and his point was we added things to
Yeah.
Section 61s in addition to what was required by MIPA. So I think that's what he was trying to say, and perhaps maybe not the most artful way.
No, it's just the word minimum. I understand.
why don't we delete
Let's
the-
just delete the word minimum for the hell of it, yeah.
I would suggest to delete the word minimum.
Okay, so I'll amend the motion to include that the minutes of the meeting of April 25th, 2016 be approved, but as amended to delete the reference at 1:42 p.m. to the word minimum as it relates to the standard that MIPA would require, and subject as well to corrections, typographical errors, and other non-material matters.
Any discussion, further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously.
Thank you.
That reminds me, I've been meaning to ask, every once in a while I come across a mistranscription in the archives, in the transcripts. How do we who do I send that to?
You're talking about an actual mistake in the transcripts themselves?
Right,
as
where the,
opposed
where
to
the,
minutes?
yeah, where the words, yeah, in the transcript
Okay.
itself, where the transcriber just misconstrued a word that was spoken.
Okay. You can send it to us. We don't reread all the transcripts on
No,
a
I
regular
know.
basis to correct it, but if you find something that's material and you'd like us to change, just send it to us.
Okay, it's only, I don't read them routinely either, but obviously there are occasionally mistakes, and I happen to pick one up that I would like to check, so I'll send that to you. Okay?
Okay, and as to the minutes of April 28th, 2016, I move that they be approved, subject as well to corrections, typographical errors, and other non-material matters.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Next up is Director Griffin.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm here to update you on the Massachusetts Gaming Commission's grants to enhance supplier diversity in the gaming industry. And I'm going to, of course, invite Commissioner Stebbins to jump in as he was involved in the process as well. The Gaming Commission has awarded or will award $100,000 in grants to 6 recipients statewide as part of the Diversity Goal and Business Technical Assistance Grant Program. The Commission recently developed and approved this grant program to optimize the outcomes for the diversity goals outlined in Chapter 23K related to diversity contracting goals of the casino developers. And as you are well aware, the expanded gaming law requires that each casino set their own diversity goals for the utilization of minority, women, and veteran-owned businesses as part of the design, construction, and operations of the casino. So the Commission recently requested grant applications to consider funding nonprofits, public or quasi-public organizations through this grant program. The goals of the program included helping diverse firms succeed in casino markets for goods and services and as subcontractors to prime contractors during construction. Through the selection process, the Commission identified 6 recipients through a competitive process open to proven or promising programs, partnerships, or initiatives. And I'm pleased to indicate that we have selected 2 recipients in Western Massachusetts. The Springfield Regional Chamber will receive $10,000. They have partnered with the Black Leadership Alliance and the Latino Chamber of Commerce to offer small business technical assistance and diversity certification workshops. And here with me today, I have members from the Association of Black Business Professionals of Springfield, who will receive $20,000. They have partnered with a number of organizations in a truly collaborative effort. And they're going to talk a little bit more in a minute about their initiative. But I just wanted to give you an overview that in Eastern Mass, the Hispanic American Institute has partnered with the Chelsea Chamber of Commerce and another nonprofit, Social Capital, Inc. And they will focus on information dissemination and outreach to targeted businesses in Everett, Chelsea, Boston, and the surrounding communities through media, community web portals, and outreach to businesses, offering technical assistance, and also focusing on minority business certification and increasing those numbers. We have recommended 3 organizations that focus statewide. The Center for Women in Enterprise will be awarded $15,000 for the creation of a pre-recorded video workshop explaining the casino procurement process. The video will include information about supplier needs, diversity and certification in general, and will be something that we can provide a link on our website as well as theirs and the casino should they wish. The Greater New England Minority Supplier Development Council will also receive an award of $20,000 to support the identification of qualified businesses as suppliers to casinos, and the creation of a database of potential MBEs for operational casino phase.
That database doesn't exist?
There are a number of general databases of minority businesses. This will be a database that is categorized by the casino's needs, and they'll be looking far and wide in order to be inclusive. Additionally, the Supplier Diversity Office of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts will receive $20,000 to develop, implement, and support an expanded certification program for veteran-owned businesses. As you know, the governor recently announced the expansion of certification of just service disabled veteran-owned businesses, and an intention to ultimately be able to certify veteran-owned businesses. So this will help the casinos tremendously. So unless you have any questions, I'd love to turn it over to our guests to highlight their program.
I do have questions, but I'd
Yeah.
rather hear from our guests first, because I have a question about a statewide
Oh, okay, okay.
agency.
So I'll introduce to my immediate right, Richard Griffin Jr., no relation.
You don't know that.
Maybe, to my knowledge, from the Springfield Office of Planning and Economic Development. And to his right, Robert Jones from the Association of Black Business and Professionals. And they are joined by Siobhan Plummer, also from the Springfield Office of Planning and Economic Development.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As a representative of the Association of Black Business and Professionals, we're excited to work in collaboration with the City of Springfield, the Regional Chamber of Commerce, in welcoming Enterrise. I don't know if you're familiar with that program, to help minority, veteran, women-owned small businesses, community-based small businesses in Springfield. This is their first foray into Western Mass. They tend to focus on economically struggling communities. They're in Lawrence, for example. I think they may be in Lynn, Mass. They work in Boston. They're in New York City, certain boroughs in New York City. They're in Houston. They're all over the country. And basically what it is they look at established businesses, small businesses, minority businesses in these economically depressed areas that have been around for 3 to 5 years. Their criteria is also they want revenues being generated anywhere between $250,000 and $10 million. So this isn't really for startup businesses. This is for established businesses that kind of need a lift and a ballast to their business plan. So it's kind of like an accelerated MBA, if you will, helping these business owners look at their cost-benefit analysis, the profit and loss ratio, marketing, the product knowledge, et cetera, et cetera. Because a lot of folks, they want to get into business because they have an idea, but they don't necessarily know how to operate a business. It takes more than just an idea. And Enterrise has had some success, and they chronicle those successes with their statistics. So they record and dialogue every success and every failure, if there are any, along the way, because they take that data, roll it up, and that's how they kind of look at how are we going to tweak our program. So like I mentioned before, in collaboration with the Regional Chamber of Commerce, the City of Springfield, we're looking to bring this program into the City of Springfield to help these small community-based businesses.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The City of Springfield was really excited about this idea with Enterrise. One of the main reasons is because it really helps these businesses to do business with the anchor institutions. MGM, we know, is going to be one of the major institutions, a major anchor institution that's going to be here. So it's about a 5 to 6 month program where these businesses can scale up and they'll be prepared to deal with the gaming institutions, not just in Springfield, but across Massachusetts. The other part about it that we're very excited about is that they usually, when they work with a business, they add about 2 to 3 jobs per business, and the average salary is about $60,000 per job. So the job adding aspect, everything is tracked, everything is, they have the statistics on everything, and they follow these businesses for 3 years. So we really think it's going to benefit MGM and the gaming institutions and the businesses and the unemployment, for the unemployment rate here in the City of Springfield.
In addition to what Richard Griffith mentioned, the average income per household in Springfield is around $28,000
In the economic depressed areas.
in the economic depressed area. So the fact that Enterrise is able, on average, to add 2 or 3 jobs with a salary around $60,000 is a significant boost to the community and community-based economics.
Great, questions? Mr. Riffin, I assume that metric you talk about, we'll be able to see that?
Yes.
Because that'll be really interesting.
Yeah.
Jill, you want to make sure
Absolutely.
that's really useful data, however it works out.
Yeah.
Great.
Do you have a sense as to how many businesses may be part of what you were describing as the target of
For the first
Enterprise?
cohort, we're looking at 15 businesses, and like I said, each cohort is about 5 to 6 months, so we're going to try to do 2 cohorts in 1 year. And then, and if we can get more, that'll be great, but they do have to go through a selection process. These are established businesses, they're not startups. About a 3-year track record, and so they're scaling them up. So their business plan, or the businesses that they're doing their study, they're studying their own business. They're not studying GE, they're not studying another company. They're studying their own business plan. So they're looking at their business. Do I have the right people in place? Do I need to lose somebody and then gain some other people? Or, maybe they're in the wrong job description because this is my brother. I have him doing this, but maybe he's not the right person in marketing or sales. So, so it's about 15 businesses.
And without getting into any specifics necessarily, there's an assumption that some of those may be good targets for the casino industry in Massachusetts?
Yes,
in Springfield?
definitely. We are working with Shalon Brown from MGM
Okay.
to try to identify businesses that fit the criteria for the program. They do specialize in working with minority, women-owned businesses and veteran-owned businesses. So we're really taking a target with the regional chamber of commerce as well. They have their a woman chamber of commerce that falls underneath them.
Right.
And but we're trying to work anything that supports the major institutions, especially MGM. But we're also looking at the hospitals and colleges as well.
Do you know offhand of any businesses that might be in that cohort that do the kind of service delivery or the product that MGM could use?
Right now, we haven't chosen. We're still working out our contract with Enterprise.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go through the selection process of advertising and putting out there, see what type of businesses. But we're going to also target businesses that we're going to go after to try to join it. So that's why we thought Shalon would be great, because she's always been dealing with businesses that
Right.
they can fall in that criteria.
Great.
And I'll mention, Shalon has been very excited about this program, so.
Good. Great.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Good luck.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very
I
much.
did have a question on another topic. I think, as I see the mix of grants here, I would characterize them as local and regional nonprofits, like our guests, that could leverage a lot what's happening and make those connections as were being described here. I have questions about a statewide state agency, and even though the amounts of grants are very modest, the Supplier Diversity Office, that's their mission. Their mission is to certify businesses, and the notion that they will do something on an expedited fashion because they're recipients of grants makes me wonder about the efficacy of those dollars, or if there's on that side, a two-tier system in which, in order for us to be efficient, us agencies, state agencies, we need to be the recipients of grants. So I have a bit of a discomfort on the principle of funding, a state agency to do what's really part of their mission. By the way, I said this in parallel with, we're currently, there's this question about an indirect cost that we have to assess our licensees, and that it's very unclear what that really has to pay for. I would argue maybe this is the sort of thing that the indirect cost that we're being assessed to should pay for. If there's increased activity because of the casinos, we're already effectively paying for that. I know that's not necessarily a question to you, this notion of the indirect, but I just wanted to put it out there because I see the mix of grant recipients here very different. One in which local nonprofits are worthy of, trying to support them in some way, but state agencies I put in a different category.
It's a good point that you raised, and I think Jill and I were somewhat surprised. We've had numerous conversations with the Supplier Diversity Office, looking at how they are hoping to expand the current services, and obviously the administration's efforts are tied into that. Where they're hoping to focus on veterans, I think has been, we found the resources out there lacking. I'm hoping this is getting your question or the point. We, veteran certification, we've talked about this a lot. There's no infrastructure to do it to the level that we know minority and women-owned businesses can get certified. We have, generally accepted, somebody's DD 214, their discharge information as a way for them to claim that they're a veteran. But when SDO approached us and said, listen, we want to try to also do veteran certification, to the degree that when they examine a business, they're looking at the management infrastructure, they're finding out that if the principal of the company is really that engaged in the day-to-day operation. Because in the back of our mind, and we've talked about this with veterans representatives, it's mud on everybody's face. If somebody claims to be a veteran-owned business and turns out not to be. And I think what SDO put forward, and again, I agree with you, it's somewhat of a unusual arrangement. This would probably, be something we could even conclude through an ISA with another state agency. But trying to find a way for them to delve a little more deeper into veteran certification, if ultimately that's where their organization goes, but to help us make sure that we really are getting veteran-owned and operated businesses through the certification process. So it's not a lot of money. I think you pointed that out, but I think it's an opportunity that we can use with them to get to the goals of certifying veteran-owned businesses on top of the work that they already do in women and minority-owned businesses.
Yeah, no, I understand the point. I understand the goal. I'm questioning that, that is their mission. That's what they get appropriations. I would argue that, a lot of what we're doing in terms of the indirect cost pays for that and every other state agency, not just the Supplier Diversity Office, but I've made my point.
But it is I think the overhead issue is sort of arcane amongst us, but the issue just of paying an agency to do something which is within its mandate is an interesting question. I think it's becoming pretty commonplace. Just, yesterday I was at an event where money was raised to give to the Department of DCR, whatever it's called, Department of Conservation and Recreation, in order to maintain the trees in the Emerald Necklace. And the Emerald Necklace, their job is to maintain the trees on the Emerald Necklace, but they don't have enough money to do it properly, so private money is added to it, which is, somewhat similar. So I think it's definitely worth keeping an eye on, and it raises, you certainly don't want to set up a situation where somebody can come in from the outside and pay an agency to serve them better than they serve everybody else, which is part of
my
the
point,
right?
too.
So it's a legitimate concern, but I think it's worth keeping an eye on. But but Commissioner Stebbins makes clear that this was really to do something which is kind of outside its ambit. It doesn't have the infrastructure to do yet, like DCR doesn't have the money to take care of the trees. But I think it's a legitimate point that we should keep an eye on.
Right. I certainly hear your concerns and especially understand the indirect cost issue. I would just add to the conversation that this has been a challenge for our licensees in terms of meeting and finding veteran-owned businesses. So this is something that we deemed a priority in this grant period. And since this is an expansion of their responsibilities, we thought it would be beneficial to all the licensees to focus on this. So I certainly hear your concern.
Yeah.
I understand that. I'll I'll leave it at, would be very interested in seeing the metrics that could come back from, what kind of evolution the veteran certification has had.
Right.
Maybe not necessarily as a result of this grant, because it's, as I said, very modest, but for us to tell the story of what has evolved, maybe as a result of
Right. And
your
we-
efforts, personal efforts, our discussions, the licensees, pull and push, et cetera.
I look forward to coming back with great results. So,
Thank you.
Anything else
any other questions?
for Director Griffin? Thank you,
Thank you,
folks.
Commissioners.
Appreciate you
Appreciate
coming
it.
in.
Thank you.
All right, good luck.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Next up is item 4, Ombudsman Ziemba.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I ask that we reverse the order of the MGM Springfield items up for consideration today. I recommend that MGM first provide an update on the design of its facility. After the presentation, any questions from the Commission, I recommend that the Commission consider a motion further approving the design of the MGM Springfield facility. After that, MGM could provide its quarterly report.
Okay,
That sound okay?
fine with us if it's with them.
In regard to the MGM's design, as you're aware, on December 17, 2015, the Commission approved the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act, Section 61 findings for the MGM Springfield project. At that time, it was noted that an approval of the Section 61s would in effect be an approval of the major and fundamental elements of MGM's proposed redesign. That initial approval in December followed a thorough review of the proposed redesign that involved numerous presentations before the Commission, a hearing out here in Springfield, and an extensive comment period. After the Commission's December 2015 approval, MGM sought and received site plan approval from the Springfield City Council. During that process, MGM made a number of changes to the design of the facility to address local concerns and to further improve the design. In January, MGM presented some of those changes to the Commission. For some examples, MGM developed a plan for a new iconic sign on its proposed garage and made a number of roadway and parking improvements after consultation with abutting property owners. MGM will describe these changes in its presentation. MGM will also note a few elements of its design that remain under discussion. Following the design presentation, Council Blue and I can describe the proposed motion up for your consideration. With that as a background, I asked Jed Nozel, outside counsel from Brown Rudnick from MGM Springfield, Mike Mathis, president of MGM Springfield, Brian Packer, MGM vice president of construction, and Seth Stratton, MGM Springfield general counsel, to begin their presentation.
Good morning, members of the Commission, Chairman
Good
Crosby.
morning. Welcome.
As John said, if we can go to the next slide, he highlighted some of the regulatory history of the path that's led us here today. Overall, this chart demonstrates the significant level of review and number of approvals the project design has received since proposing the changes and outlining.
Jed,
the
excuse
video.
me.
Yep.
Are we going to get the slides on this monitor? Okay.
Sure.
Sorry.
No problem at all. Really, this takes us from where we first presented the design changes to the Commission to the present date, and again, highlighting all the work certainly that's occurred since then. And the various approvals, including MIPA, and in the context of the Section 61. Throughout these processes, the Commission really has left no issue unaddressed. And what this chronology doesn't show is the significant back and forth that we've had with the staff and its consultants regarding very particular details of the design as it's moved through this process. So that brings us here today to ask the Commission to vote to approve the final design and site plan as approved by the City Council in February 22nd of 2016. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mike Mathis in support of that to present a brief overview and answer questions that the Commission may have.
Thanks, Jed. Good morning. Welcome.
Morning.
Welcome to Springfield on a beautiful New England day. I've been waiting a long time for
Yeah. You'd
this
heard
day.
about these, right?
That's right. Worse than that, I advertised it to my family before I moved them out here. So I'm delivering on yet another commitment previously made. Just want to remind you, a couple opening comments. One is The matter you just had before you, providing the diversity grants to a couple of our local agencies. I just want to commend the commission for doing that and for the organizations you chose. The Springfield Regional Chamber has been a great partner of ours. We continue to work with them on finding both construction vendors and operational vendors, many of whom are right here in Western Mass and provide a national scope, and Brian's met with a few of them. So ironically, some of them are already working with some of our other resorts, unbeknownst to us. So there's tremendous resources here, but there's also resources that we have to develop with these grants. And then in the form of Rich Griffin and his wife, Nicole Griffin, they're one of the first couples I met personally here in Springfield, and they're doing so much for the community. Rich, as you know, is working on this Black Business Professionals Association to develop companies with minority backgrounds to support our business, and his wife Nicole is working on the workforce development side with a woman-owned agency that I know Bruce is aware of Nicole's work, but tremendous couple, and they're doing a lot here in Springfield. So just wanted to commend you on those grants. And then the other comment I want to make, I saw a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, your deliberation in Region C. And we are somewhat insulated out here in Western Mass from that decision, so I was able to sort of watch it truly as a spectator. And I was just taken by how thoughtful that deliberation was, and wanted to commend this group. And Commissioner McDonald, considering it was your first deliberation in this context, I think you're doing for Commissioner McHugh's, the spirit of his great work is preserved in you. So really just wanted to commend you. I was really impressed by that deliberation.
Thank you.
So with that, wanted to remind you of some of the major elements of our project. This is a $950 million development. We have an update on some of our financials with respect to where we are on our development budget. But that makes it by far the largest private development project in Western Mass, and puts it on the list of largest developments in the entirety of the Commonwealth, which frankly for too long has been centralized in the Boston, Cambridge area. So we're really proud to be part of such a transformative project. This is represents $1 billion of payments to the city of Springfield over our 40-year host community agreement. Which is a significant investment, and we think provides a lot of resources to the city to work on infrastructure, which has been in the paper the last couple of days, and different things that will be important to the city's development along with our project. 2,000 construction workers, which Brian's going to touch on. We expect approximately 3,000 operational jobs, and $50 million of local and regional spend annually. And again, we're in conversations with the regional chambers about making sure that we're able to concentrate that spend here locally. You've seen a lot of this design material, so I'll go through it quickly. If anybody has any questions and wants to slow me down, please feel free to do so, including Commissioner McDonald, because I know you haven't had as much time with it as others. But we've given these updates to you in various forms, including copies of what we've done for the city of Springfield as part of the approval we received from the city council back in February. Just an orientation map to give you some context on what the following perspectives are. Go ahead, Brian. So this is the Main Street view, looking up Main Street to the north. And you've got in the forefront, you've got our new hotel component, which is 252 keys at this point, right, Brian? 252 keys, and right on Main Street. It's a 6-level building, and we think is going to energize Main Street, and that's some of the feedback we've gotten from people that are on the other side of Main Street and are excited about this new design. And again, I liken it to the Hotel Commonwealths of the world and 15 Beacon. It's a luxury product that is on a street scale, pedestrian scale, and you can have luxury that's not necessarily in a large high-rise tower. Go ahead. This is a closer view of that same perspective. And if you look at that ocular piece that's in the center of the rendering, that's a 900 square foot, what we're calling a presidential suite, but it's going to be one of the finest luxury products in this entire region. And very excited about the level of finishes. Brian and I just came back from Las Vegas, where we met with our interior designers, and we're starting to work on the interior design of it, and it's going to be phenomenal. We'll come back and give you an update when appropriate, but it's proceeding very nicely. This is our outdoor plaza, and it doesn't have some of the detail that you've come to expect from our renderings. It's because this is meant to show you sort of the scale of it, but we will provide you further detail as we develop our project. One of the things I note here is the plaza, which is an important part of our design. In terms of where we are in the design process, we're working on infrastructure to make sure that we've got power, for example, identified in this plaza so that we can have food trucks and pop-up retail, some of the activation that Commissioner McDonald asked us about back in Boston. So we're working on the outdoor plaza piece, and we're going to put heat lamps and gas for fire and those types of things. So that's sort of the context of this, is where you'll see further detail as we progress that design.
That's great.
Go ahead. That's just another perspective where you can see to the right our outdoor, our second floor outdoor plaza space that is adjacent to our convention space. So that's going to be a really phenomenal space that I think we'll sell to convention groups that can overlook the plaza. We can sell to wedding groups, for example, to host events up there. So, and you can see the umbrellas. So there's activation both on the ground level as well as on the second floor. This is going to be a very exciting space. Again, sort of streetscape level activation of that space with the casino to the right, and then the movie theater and Taps sporting bar to the left. Go ahead. This is looking to the east, the other side of our hotel component. And as you can see, the differing facades represents the flip side of what you would see on Main Street. And I think that's what makes this component of the project really unique, is we're matching the streetscapes on the other side of Main Street, and while it'll be a single product behind it, you'll get a sense that we really combined 4 or 5 different buildings to create this structure. The pool deck, we're looking at those suites that you see with fences that abut the pool deck. Those will be an incredible product. In general, we think we can command $50 to $75 premium on those, on the pool suites. On the other side of that wall, which is the spa, will be something like our garden suites, and the same idea, outdoor space, which is really unique in this market. That is our outdoor plaza. And you can see we've got the ornamental, what do you call those?
Trusses.
Thank you. Got the ornamental trusses that are on top of the plaza. In the summers, it'll be a farmer's market, which is sort of depicted here, and in the winters, that'll house our skating rink. And you can see some retail shown behind it as well. Above it would be our...
Excuse me, Mike,
Yeah.
is it built, I think I asked this before, is it built to carry like a canvas tarp if you wanted to? Is that an option that would be on the table?
So a couple of things we're looking at structurally is to do exactly what you just described. Also, is there any chance to work in AV equipment, speakers, lighting? Can we have that flexibility? Structurally, maybe one can handle more than some of the others, but we're looking into those options.
Yeah, I have no idea, obviously, what the extra cost is to make it capable of handling that, but I could imagine that in this off seasons when the weather isn't quite right, you could maximize the utilization of that space if you couldn't cover it.
Yeah, we are looking at that. That's a question we've asked internally, and some of the things that the engineers will tell you is what makes it difficult, not impossible, are the wind loads, the rain loads.
Yeah, right.
It's more difficult than it looks,
Right.
but it's something I agree with you that provides some opportunities if we could bring tarps down even on the sides and then close that space, depending on the harsh weather conditions. So we'll continue to look at that. Go, Brian. This is a great perspective because it's a reality, as you know, and we'll show you some images from our church relocation. But this is looking from Union back into the project. You're looking at the back of the armory, and then you're seeing that plaza space. So that church now is in the location shown on the rendering, which it wasn't 3 weeks ago, which is pretty neat. This is our food market, South End Market image. You're looking up State Street, and again, one of the great things about this rendering, to remind you, is the facade with the 4 columns is part of an existing building. We're going to do what's, I understand it's called a facadectomy. You have some of those in Boston. and Brian is now working on the engineering to support the rest of the building while we demolish it and leave that facade in place. And then we're gonna recreate the other side of that building on the outside of this South End Market. So the appearance is that we literally drop South End Market into an existing building, which will be pretty neat. This is an important perspective because it shows the Starbucks on State Street facing the courthouse. And I think this is important to show the amenities that we're providing to the downtown business community. We think there's going to be a lot of business that we'll get during the day, maybe off-peak tourism hours. That'll be for the lawyers and different professionals that work in the downtown corridor. We joke around about how many plea deals may be made in that courtyard throughout the justice system, but it's an important space, I think, for the community. This is our garage, and you can see just a sense of how we might clad it with different promotional materials for existing business as well as retailers. And you can see our sign in the background. And then the sign, you'll recall, we talked about our inspiration for it, and really it's paying homage to really what's a uniquely New England feature, which is some of these iconic signs. I think Public Market is out in Seattle, but the sense of these large neon lettered signs, and you can see our latest rendering of it. Brian is out in the market talking to engineers and designers about some of the specifications around it, including this lighting that we want to look at on the two columns that support the sign to give it more visibility. But that's going to be an incredibly prominent sign because you're right off the viaduct, and it's it'll be above the garage and very prominent.
Mike, you just reminded me of something. Have you got any information on the status of the viaduct apropos of its schedule?
Yeah, we do. Brian, you want to touch on that?
Yeah, so on exactly where they're landing on their, current schedule versus proposed, we can't speak to. I can speak to that we've started going to meetings with MassDOT once every 2 weeks, and to be able to coordinate certain things related to their schedule. So if we're going to have a large amount of truck deliveries, we want to make sure that, say, for the precast concrete, when it's coming down the highway, it can fit through the Jersey barriers or some of the safety concerns that we may have to coordinate. So we currently have folks in those meetings. Obviously, it was a light winter, so we'd anticipate that, and just from what we see out there, the coordination, the impact on traffic seems to be going well, but exactly where they are, I can't speak to.
But the way you ended up is you have several months, like 5 months slip time between their projected, hoped for conclusion and your openings, right? So you're protected to some extent by a slip time.
I think that might have been on their last projection, correct? However, their contract date, I think we have a 30-day slip time.
Right, they had a hoped for date and a
Right.
must date,
Yeah.
right?
Remember, the last phase of that project is the paving, which cannot occur during winter. And so if they don't do it by whenever it was, September, October, it flips all the way to March or April. And
I'm sure
it remains to be seen, how that progresses.
I'm sure we don't have to advise you to
No,
make
no,
sure
no,
they're
no.
on schedule.
No, I'll just, anecdotally, as someone that rides those roads and hears the feedback, I think both for our own construction project and for the viaduct, people have been pleasantly surprised about how we've managed both in terms of the traffic. There is some congestion, certainly, but we try to make sure that our work isn't going on during a particularly critical period of their work, and I commend them on the way they've managed it and gotten people through that tight corridor.
Good.
This is our finishes schedule, material schedule, and I think the importance of this document is it allowed us to make commitments and sort of allay some of the concerns that certainly the city council had, I think some of your staff had, about what level of design are we at, and how can you get comfortable that, notwithstanding the fact that we're not at a point where we can identify certain materials, that we at least agree on the standard of those materials. So this is a representative palette of what Brian and our designers have committed to give you a sense of where the final product will land. And then just want to give you an update on a couple of pending items, which my understanding are going to be excluded from what will be proposed as the approval for today. As you know, we have an off-site market rate residential commitment we've made. We are in discussions with the city and believe we will be in a position in the next 30 to 45 days to provide a specific plan around that residential program. We're at a point now where we're talking to a few different parties, so I'm unable to give you specific details about which particular components we're looking at, but just from a timing standpoint, I think we'll be in a position over the summer to tell you where we're at, and we'll come hand in hand with the city and their support for the plan, if all goes.
What is the on their February 22nd approval? That was also, there was a housing condition. What is the term? What are the terms of the housing condition in your agreement with the city?
Go
I
ahead,
can
Seth.
address that, Commissioner. So basically what we did, and I'll touch on some of the other aspects of the host community agreement amendment, but what we did in our February approvals from the city is we amended the host community agreement to reflect our new design. And one of the key aspects of that was changing the discussion of the residential from being on site to no less than 54 market rate units within a half mile of the project in downtown Springfield, roughly half of which need to be built 18 months from the approval. So we're right now on an 18-month timeline to do the first tranche of residential units if we don't do them all together. So the city wanted to see some of those come online sooner, and we agreed to that. So essentially, it gives flexibility. The one other aspect of that, important aspect, is that it's units that would be either owned, operated, or branded by MGM within half a mile of the project. So that's the current language in the HCA. We continue our discussions with the city around our plans, and they have a lot of input and desire to collaborate with us in making sure that they're on the same page with us on the ultimate product that comes out of that.
Is there a financial element of that? At one point, the units had a cost associated with them and were part of your total budget. I guess that's still the case, albeit a smaller piece. Does the city have a financial threshold as part of the deal as well?
No.
So the threshold is own, operate, or brand?
Correct.
But not necessarily, there's no financial terms in that agreement.
No, but there is, and I'll actually point to it on a slide later, but there's some language around quality standards, so it's market rate, upper upscale, urban, so that there's we're looking at a certain level of residential, and so the city is going to hold us to that promise in terms of the quality and character of the units.
And what's the component, within the 950, the residential housing component is what, more or less?
Yeah, it represents about $10 million of our budget.
In the 950?
That's right.
It's 10 million?
Yep. And, one of the reasons I think the city got away from a pure financial sort of threshold is one of the things that we think we have an opportunity to do now that we're moving the units off-site, outside of our four boundaries, is to partner with local potential building owners and partners so that they can share in the economic development. So it goes from being potentially a wholly owned piece to something that we could collaborate with different local stakeholders who have been around waiting for some of the economic opportunity.
I have a question. I think I understand what own and operate mean in this context, but what does brand mean in this context as an alternative?
Sure. It speaks to licensing our name, which is a very high standard from our perspective, but it allowed for the opportunity that we could satisfy this obligation. And I don't think they're all mutually exclusive. So in my mind, although they're set up legally as alternates, it could be a combination of own, operate, and/or license, brand our name to the product, which will add to its marketability and value certainly. And then it also speaks to potential partnerships between the resort. For example, residency in whatever these units end up being might give you rights, privileges in the resort, which again make it that much more attractive. So it allowed for that kind of partnering and collaboration.
If I could just add one more point on that, Mike, part of the discussions when we came up with that language where the city was looking to move the residents off site, there'd be opportunities to partner with local developers to do that. And so not knowing what sort of partnership and structure we'd be able to work out with either current real estate owners and developers, we wanted to give flexibility to have it, the box checked by ownership, by an operating relationship, or even by branding, so that we'd have flexibility to take advantage of collaborations with existing developers within the city.
The only point that I would pursue this is that the way it was originally structured, and it was a really important part of it, as you know, for us, was that this was a part of an inherent part of the project that you were bringing to the table, something that wasn't already there. And that's not the same as piggybacking on something that's going to be there whether you're there or not, you know. So there's a line to walk, and I understand the pressure's on you, but that element, unlike the tower, unlike the rejiggering of the back space, unlike anything else you've come up with, was very, very material from my standpoint. So making sure that this is still an incremental contribution to this mixed-use development project from MGM, which was the way you had originally positioned it, is really important from my standpoint.
Understand, Chairman, and I'm highly confident that when we bring you the proposal we're going to bring you, that you'll recognize it as the transformative, component that we had promised as per the original design, even more so in my mind.
Okay.
But we understand. The other
10 million divided by 54 is $185,000, and your units used to be 800,000. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen for your 185,000.
Well, that calculation is a little misleading because the per unit count incorporated a bunch of the existing facade work that you see, for example, there.
Right.
So, but understood.
Yeah.
The other update I want to provide you is for the corner of Union and Main. It's not shown in this rendering, but it's the corner that's on the opposite side of Red Rose Pizza there, and it's the side of the former Dave's Furniture store. The update there is that, because it's isolated and on the corner and not in the critical path of what Brian's doing on the site, it's got a different timeline in our mind. And we've had conversations, right now it's shown as retail. We've had conversations with retailers and also food and beverage operators that have a strong interest in that corner. From our perspective, we think that we can optimize the opportunity farther down the development timeline when people can see, potential retailers, operators can see more progress on the site, and maybe can see an anchor tenant announce, one or two. So we continue to work on that location, and we understand the importance of it in terms of it's one of our front doors when you're coming up Main Street from the south end. But we won't have, I don't think we won't have an update for you for a little bit of time, because we want to make sure that the rest of the project is at a stage where we can go promote it as part of a package to sell this corner.
What's the size of that space?
It's about 7,000 to 10,000 square feet, depending on how we handle the surface parking that's connected to it, and that's part of the discussion. It'll be largely driven, I think, by the tenants we're speaking to. It could fit, if you go to 10,000 square feet, it could fit 2 operators. If it's a restaurant, it can fit multiple retailers.
Right.
And that space you own, right? That is part of the gaming establishment.
That's correct.
Yeah, right.
And if I heard you correctly, it could be retail, or it could be food and beverage, or a mix?
That's right.
Yep, okay.
That's right, and we'll come back. The architectural finishes it'll feel like the campus, so just because it's isolated on the corner, I want to make sure you understood that commitment from us. But yeah, we'll provide you updates as we continue to talk to folks about that. And then lastly, daycare, and this is the corner that is caddy corner to the Dave's Furniture site.
I'm sorry, Mike, again. Can we get the pictures on here again? Yeah, thanks.
Great. So you've seen this location identified in the past. This is what we call the Zorzi lot, which is caddy corner to the Days Furniture site on the other side of Main Street. We're in the process, right now we're showing, which was consistent with our local and city approvals and the designs we've provided to you, an approximate 6,000 square foot daycare facility with a 4,000 square foot play area. And we're in conversations with different daycare managers, operators, to help make sure that the design is appropriate, because that's where we're at in terms of Brian's process, is nailing down design. And then we would go out in the next, I would say, 60 days to the market for an RFP for who that operator would be. And the preferred operator right now is Square One, which is the local daycare provider in Springfield. But it will be a competitive process, we think, at this point, unless we can work something out with them that makes sense in terms of the sole source. But we're, again, about 60 days away from an RFP going out and starting that iterative process with the manager.
Mike, you show on the corner of Union and Main, which is now an empty lot retail. Is that your retail, or what you hear through development, opportunities somebody else might be taking for retail?
Yes, so this lot is owned by the Davenport Group. Chuck Irving, who you've seen at our presentations, we've identified as a development partner. And really, this is a great example of the ancillary development that comes with a billion-dollar development. And we think there's other opportunities around the edges of our property. But Chuck Irving and his group are developing the site with us as an anchor tenant, but he's also starting to fill it out with retail and office space. And I know he's got some preliminary deals tentatively signed. So we're creating some of that momentum, not only within our four corners, but even on the adjoining pieces.
That's great.
Would final design, the selected operator would have some say in that? Is that whoever you choose to be your daycare operator?
Yeah, that's right. I think more on the interiors than the
Right.
exteriors, because it's a very specific guidelines in terms of square footage and layout. So we operate one of these in Las Vegas, so we know generally how these work. But Massachusetts, as you can imagine, has even more specific rules when it comes to programming on this. And
Sorry about that.
yeah, a lot more sinks and a lot more caretakers. But we're understanding it, and we're going to partner with them on the final design, and we'll bring it back to you for review. And with that, I think I can hand it off to Seth.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to
morning.
cover city approvals, and Mike, even though this was a mild winter, Mike, Brian, and I were fortunate to miss most of the bad weather because we spent the majority of it in the Springfield City Council chambers. So we had, as you know, we had a very lengthy and deliberative process with the Springfield City Council. Mike touched on some of the design elements that we reviewed during those sessions with the council. We worked hard to communicate with all the members of the council and the city the plans that we've just explained to you. A good portion, though, of that discussion focused on two other items, which I'll cover, which is abutter resolutions. There was a lot of discussions around abutters. The abutters attended those hearings, raised some concerns that they had discussed with us previously, as well as some new concerns, and we're happy to report that we were able to resolve all of those abutter issues during those multiple sessions. And the other issue I'll touch on is getting into a bit of detail on that host community agreement amendment, which we just discussed, and what that covered. So, and I'll go actually abutter by abutter. There's a lot of detail in here. I'll just try to summarize, but the main concerns that our abutter Red Rose had revolved around this Howard Street, the Howard Street and the roundabout rotary here. And the concern essentially was by Red Rose that he didn't want traffic from our project to interfere with his business. Very understandable. And some concerns that if this Howard Street and the cul-de-sac here didn't look like a street, that folks would go to pull into Howard Street, get confused, and go to turn around in his parking lot and wreak havoc on his parking. So one of the things that was very important to him and that we agreed to through this process was that the surface materials are going to be generally consistent with public ways, so that it's very clear to folks that if they do turn in this Howard Street, they have the ability to come down and turn around and exit without interfering with his parking. So that was a major issue that we dealt with. And then the rest of it really deals with signage, to be clear that parking is not allowed on that street, no idling, and that there be some signalization at Union and Main Streets to ensure that any extra traffic coming onto Union and Main doesn't interfere with the ability of Red Rose's customers to access the property. So we were able to get on the same page. Those have been incorporated into site plan conditions approved by the City Council. Next slide.
Said just
Yeah, sure.
one thing. Can cars go between the two parkings on what's the Red Rose and the other parking? On
Yeah,
the,
so that's our parking to the right of Red Rose. No, one of the things that we were in some discussions around doing that, but the ownership of Red Rose had concerns about our patrons using their parking, and so there is going to be a hard barrier, curbing and fencing between those two lots.
Okay.
Moving on to, so Courthouse Park Associates owns this corner parcel here, which is the Bacon Wilson Law Firm, as well as the bank. One of the important aspects of that property for both their tenants and the public is the significant parking lot they have there, which is used as a paid parking lot that patrons, customers of the courthouse use, and it's a revenue generating aspect of that property. And they had concerns about the impact of our project on access to that parking lot. So a few of the things that we agreed to here that are incorporated as conditions were we will fund the installation of an automated parking barrier, likely a gate arm, on the back portion of their property that abuts ours, so that they can reduce the potential for cut-through traffic. We're also going to install an ornamental fence along Bliss Street. There's a chain link fence there now. In terms of curb appeal and improvement to the property that'll be mutually beneficial, we'll install an ornamental fence there and appropriate traffic signage. We'll also have some signage directing our folks exiting the garage to discourage entrance into their parking lot as a cut-through. Finally, we're going to reconstruct the sidewalk along the north side of Bliss Street, which abuts their property. So what is now, it's as far as sidewalks go, it could use some updating. So it's an older sidewalk with chain link fence. It'll be a nice new sidewalk with ornamental fencing, which I think they're pleased with. The next abutter is the Colvest property, which is reflected right here. It says existing building. That's the Berkshire Bank building. We've been in long discussions with Colvest, Frank Colicino, who's been cooperative with us. Again, his major concern was the impact of cut-through traffic, using his parking lot as a cut-through to access, say, Union Street, and to get on the highway, and so and resulting interference with his business. What we agreed to here and approved by the city was that we would reconstruct the curbing to essentially bring out the island and make it very difficult to take a left turn out of our property into his. It'd be virtually impossible without creating some issues to take that left turn, and he was satisfied with that resolution. Then our abutter across Union Street, Pride, had concerns about, again, this all relates to access and egress and interference with traffic into our abutters' properties. If you see, folks will be coming out of our garage, coming down Union Street, and the entrance to the Pride property in this picture is to the right. What they've requested is what's known in the traffic industry as a do not block the box, where you've got some cross-hatching and folks won't be able to stop, and the signalization won't allow a blocking of the street adjacent to the entrance and exit of that property. So they were satisfied with that approach, and that was incorporated as a condition to the site plan approval. Finally, parcel 14, which is the Michelman and Burstein property, which we've been in long discussions with resolving some of their concerns. You know, that's a unique property because it's really a zero lot line property that abuts our property on all sides. And they have no parking, and really the building goes up to the lot line. And so one of the major concerns that they raised was that their customers have long used public on-street parking to access their property. And they had a number of other concerns, but we really came up with what we thought was a very generous and fulsome proposal to address some of their concerns. And that is essentially that we've committed to put a public parking lot on the property that we own directly behind their property, which will greatly increase. I mean, folks were looking at on-street parking before. There's going to be a minimum 25 space parking lot right behind their building. They also have some residential units, and we agreed that overnight use, we would allow access for their residents to park overnight so that they can park right behind the building now in our lot just overnight. They also raised concerns about construction impact, and so essentially what we've done, and Brian just finished the paving the other day, you'll see this box here next to their property. That's property we own. We've cleared and paved and fenced that, so it's a temporary parking lot that we own, but that they have exclusive access to during the construction. We've also said that if that's not enough, if you're, apparently they've been leasing some spaces from the Colvest property across the street, we said that we would reimburse them for the cost of an additional 4 lease spaces upon evidence that they're making those payments. So we also provided some storage and trash. We're going to give them a license to use a portion of our property once we're operational to access, to have new access to trash, dumpster, or trash receptacles that they've never had before. And all along the property, the parking lot and their property, we're going to construct new sidewalks for pedestrian access, which again are new amenities to that property. Finally, we said that there were some concerns about the impact on if there are residents of that property, the lighting, and we said if it's necessary to install awnings or interior window treatments to address lighting at night, that we would fund the cost of those. So those are the resolutions that we came up with, agreed to, and approved by the city for that parcel. Finally, much of the discussion around, other than traffic, access and egress, a lot of the abutter concerns and questions had to do with our parking. And so one of the things that we did through the discussions with the city is we put some details around and received city approval of the parameters of our parking. And there's one of the primary commitments we made was that the previously available on-street public parking that is no longer available as a result of our project will be replicated in surface lots, 2-hour free parking in our surface lots during the business hours. And so those lots are right here behind the Dave's parcel, and then the one I was just discussing behind the Michelman parcel. We'll have sufficient handicap parking to replace handicap parking that was previously available. So that was the on-street public parking aspect of it. We've also, as a result of the purchase and acquisition of parcels and the construction of the project, we've essentially replaced what used to be paid parking lots. And through our MIPA filings, the counts were done, and that's an approximately 700 spaces of private paid parking that was previously available to patrons of businesses, customers, business owners downtown. And so what we've committed to do is to provide a minimum of 700 parking spaces that would be available to the public at the same hours at a rate that we determine in our parking lot. It's likely going to be more than that, but we've said at a minimum we're going to replace what previously existed, those 700 paid parking spaces. And then we had some qualifications around peak usage and overnight 24-hour parking during events and that being restricted to our guests. So that was the parking program that we spent a lot of time discussing with the council and got the council on board and comfortable with and approved through that process. I think unless there's questions on that, I'll move to a brief summary of that host community agreement amendment. So, next slide, Brian. There's 3 aspects, and I won't go through each detail, but there's 3 aspects to that host community agreement amendment. Essentially, it covered the fact that we're opening approximately 1 year later than we initially intended. So the original host community agreement contemplated a fall of 2017 opening. So that amendment contemplates our September 2018 opening. Along with that schedule change, we made some payment adjustments. 2 primary of importance to the city. As you might recall, one of the things we're doing is we're funding in advance these 121A payment in lieu of tax payments that we'll make once we're operational. So around $17.5 million a year once we open. We're pre-funding some of those during the pre-construction stage so that the city has access to funds to ramp up, hire police, et cetera. And we've made 2 of those payments already, a $4 million and a $3 million payment. It was going to be $10 million that we'd advance pre-opening. We're now going to advance $13 million. And so we've added that additional $3 million advance that the city requested. We also made a new $1 million grant to the city in connection with our delayed opening. And we discussed with the city that we both agreed that it would be important for that $1 million additional payment to really be focused on public safety measures to improve and address public safety in the city in advance of our opening. So an additional $3 million advance and a new $1 million public safety payment were the primary payment adjustments reflected in that HCA amendment that was approved by the city. Next slide, Brian. The final aspect of that was reflecting essentially our new design. And what we did is we had the RFP with the city and the host community agreement design, which was now outdated, and we said, okay, we will now take those exhibits out of the host community agreement and we'll just add in the approved site plan as the new design. And there was also some description, the Exhibit G, which is the chart that talks about the components, the square footages, and we essentially updated Exhibit G to reflect the new plan, the new square footages, the new number of various components, and in particular, the one that we spent significant time on was figuring out how do we reflect the new residential program. And as I mentioned, that's reflected in the amendment by 54 units within a half mile of the project, owned, operated, or branded by MGM, and they are to be market rate or urban upscale apartments, and we have to continue to work with the city to get their opinion and approvals on what we come up with respect to residential. So that's it for the update, unless there are any questions.
Okay, I will go into the first quarter update on construction.
Brian, did you want, I think what I propose is that the commission could then discuss the redesign, vote on that, and then we could finalize that with the quarterly report,
Sounds
unless
good,
you'd like to
yep.
proceed this way, Mr. Chairman.
I think that makes sense to me, yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, the Commission's Regulation 205 CMR 135 sets out procedures that the Commission may use to review project designs. It states that the Commission may participate in the development of key milestones of the design review process. The motion that we have crafted before you proposes a process for the Commission to continue to review the proposed design of the facility as it continues to evolve. It also builds upon the significant reviews already undertaken by the Commission and at the local level by the City of Springfield. Under the process proposed by the motion, the Commission would provide its approval of the site plan and project design submitted to and approved by the City of Springfield. As noted earlier, When the commission approved the Section 61 findings for the MGM Springfield project, this was essentially also approval of the major and fundamental elements of MGM's proposed redesign. The approval anticipated in the motion would build upon that initial approval and provide the licensee more certainty about its design as it begins construction of this almost billion-dollar facility. Importantly, staff is instructed to bring back to the commission any material change from the site plan and project design approval. Because much, if not most, of the details of the plan for the residential units, retail building on the corner of Main and Union, and the planned daycare facility remain outstanding, the further approval proposed in today's motion does not include those aspects of the proposed redesign. Such details would need to be brought back before the commission. Finally, the motion clarifies that nothing in today's potential approval should be construed to amend or supersede MGM Springfield's obligation under its Section 61 findings and under the Memorandum of Agreement with the Massachusetts Historical Commission. I do note that both MGM and the Commission have fulfilled our obligations to each provide $350,000 to the Springfield Historical Preservation Trust Fund.
Questions or discussion?
John, how does the, what we've heard about the changes in the HCA, how does that align with our review process of future design changes?
So under our regulations, there's a provision, 205 CMR 12706, which is reopening of mitigation agreements. And there's a provision for voluntary reopeners of mitigation agreements, and it specifies that the parties can change their host community agreement, provided that there is a summary of the ability to change that host community agreement, provided in the summary that was provided to the voters when they first moved forward with their host community agreement. MGM Springfield includes such a provision, and so that is in keeping with our process and our regulations.
Anybody else?
Just a question. Have you, remind me, what's the programming for the church?
Yeah, it's.
Or if that's still being worked out?
That's right, that's still being developed. So it's similar to the discussion we had about Dave's Furniture Corner. It's one of those really unique buildings. We've had preliminary discussions, and I think it's going to be multiple use, and we're leaning more towards a retail use. So I think we're looking at things that would complement the ice skating rink. So you can sort of think of hot chocolate and coffee, as well as something that has a seasonal use during the summer months. So ice cream, for example. That's what we're envisioning. But again, I think we'll have more opportunities as the project develops, and we can develop a little bit more momentum with the overall marketing program.
Right. But there's no, I mean, you're not changing that design, obviously. You would just
Yeah,
be
we moved it
programming.
once. I think that was
I think you're done with that one.
That's right.
That building's covered by the MHC MOA as well.
Yes.
That's right.
No, but, it's not like you're going to leave it empty, for example.
No, we will program that building.
Right. So we'd be approving all the elements of the design as presented with those three specific carve-outs that you mentioned, the residential units, because that's still being worked out, and that's under the discussions, the way you articulated them with the city, and you have a couple of options. The retail unit, the retail space right next to the Red Rose, and the childcare center.
With the acknowledgement that staff will continue to review the design as it develops, and if
Right.
there are material changes, we can bring those back before the commission.
Right. Anybody else? I, with the carve-outs, and I've said what I think and feel about the housing element, seeing this again, it reminds me about why we were excited about it. I've just got my fingers crossed. It's a really exciting attempt to lift a city and to integrate this casino into a whole lot of other stuff. If you listen to the Region C discussions, you heard me regret that Brockton hadn't done any of this. And as you look at these pictures and compare them to what we saw there, it just reminded me what was exciting about this. So I'm really hopeful, and it's a terrifically exciting prospect. Somebody want to move?
I agree, and I will be happy to move that the commission approved the site plan and project design submitted and represented to us here today and submitted in many iterations, and approved too by the City of Springfield on February 22nd of 2016, including any conditions included therein, provided, however, that the commission approval, this approval does not include any matters pertaining to the child care center, the retail space proposed at the corner of Main Street and Union Street, and the configuration and location of any proposed residential units required as part of the MGM license and the host community agreement. And provided further that the commission approval shall not be construed to amend or supersede any obligations required of MGM pursuant to the Section 61 findings and the Mass Historical Memorandum of Agreement relating to the project. I also move that the commission delegate to staff the review and approval of construction design plans as they are completed and prepared for use in the construction of the project, provided further that if such construction design plans contain any material change from the site plan and project design approved here today, staff will submit such plans to the commission for its review and approval.
Second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Why don't we
Thank
take a
you.
quick break before we do your update?
Thank you.
We are reconvening public meeting 191. I think we are on item 4A, the MGM quarterly report.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I'm happy to announce that this first quarter of this year was the quarter with the most progress on site, since this project has started. So we're real excited to walk you through some of the things that have gone on here in the last quarter. As you can see from the overall site progress picture here at the end of the quarter, the majority of the buildings on site are down. Zanetti's gone, and we're just preparing to move the church, which has since been moved, and we'll conclude here with a video of that church move. A better angle here is kind of from the air, and you can see, the whole site really starting to come together. Important item, we had the roads. We had the road closure approval, and then we actually followed through with closing the roads, removing the curb, securing the entire site. The building salvage, as required in our MOA, is basically 99% complete. All we lack at this point are some of the bricks off of Union Chandler Hotel. Other than that, all of the required salvage is complete. Just some progress shots of Zanetti School coming down. Some of the demolition work along Main Street.
Great.
Along Bliss. And then along State. So we really have made a bunch of progress as it relates to all the buildings and demolition and finalization of abatement. Important thing to keep in mind for the demolition, and part of our lead requirements is the sorting and recycling of all the materials on site. So as you see each building come down, steel, aluminum studs, wood, brick, you'll see different piles being sorted and shipped off to different recyclers.
Wow.
Also, a bunch of site utility work continuing on site all around in different areas, as you can imagine. Right now, we're in the middle of removing utilities that were in the roadways that have been discontinued.
And for the record, nowhere near the pipe that burst last week.
And towards the end of the quarter, getting into the garage site prep and excavation. Majority of the garage footprint is where Zanetti School was.
Nobody's ever going to remember where blue tarp came from.
That's true. Part of our abutter updates, we've spoken about this before, we give bi-weekly updates, email of construction activities that's then posted to the MGM website to all of our abutters. That key map has now changed. Before, we kind of keyed it by building, and now we're going to key it by zone because the majority of the buildings are gone. So we have a little bit of a change in how our activities get reported and communicated to the abutters. And then probably the most exciting thing about today is I'm really pleased to announce that we've made an award on the design build garage. And that award is, the design build garage has been awarded to Tishman Construction. So today we have here Eric Nelson, who is also a Springfield native. And Eric represents Tishman Construction. And we have Dave Fontaine Sr. and Jr. from Fontaine Brothers, who are also part of the project under Tishman. So with that, I'll turn it over to Eric.
Thanks, Brian. As Brian mentioned, my name is Eric Nelson. I'm the project executive for MGM Springfield from Tishman. I grew up in 16 Acres, just down the road. Tishman has worked with MGM on a variety of projects in the past, including City Center in Las Vegas, Beau Rivage, which Brian knows well, and Borgata. We view MGM as one of the finest owner-developers in their industry, and we're very pleased to be here as part of the team today. So thank you, Michael and Brian, very much. This is a very significant project for the city, and being from the city, I'm very, very pleased to be here as well. I started in our Boston office, which we've maintained for over 30 years. I've worked in Boston, Las Vegas, Abu Dhabi, New York City, Atlantic City, and now Springfield, Massachusetts. And I'm just very happy to be here, so thanks. Joining this team that MGM has set up, I'm very impressed with their commitment to contract locally and to use a local workforce here, a very diverse workforce, and that's something that I think we'll build on as we move forward in the future. Let's see, back to my notes. We've been here for quite a while, almost 18 months now. We worked with the Pioneer Valley Building Trades to negotiate the PLA. We oversaw a significant portion of the abatement and demolition work on site, and we've been very fortunate to work with a number of fantastic contractors in this local market. Dave Sr. and Jr. are sitting next to me from Fontaine. We were able to partner last summer on the mission, which I believe you've all toured. That job was delivered on a very aggressive schedule, safely and without sacrificing quality, which is very important to us moving forward here. So I'll hand it over to Dave.
Sure. So my name's Dave Fontaine Jr. I'm Vice President of Fontaine Brothers. For the commissioners who don't know about us, Fontaine is a Springfield-based company. We're fourth generation construction manager, general contractor. Been in the city since 1933. Some work that we've done around here, we basically work in all types of commercial construction. We also self-perform with our talented union tradespeople, concrete, carpentry, masonry, selective demo. Work in the area, renovations to Symphony Hall, construction of the Hilton Garden Inn, Uno's downtown, and the construction of the Mass Mutual Center, which we're in today. As Eric mentioned, our involvement in the MGM Springfield project began last summer working with Tishman to completely renovate and add to the rescue mission on that tight schedule, and that job went very well for the team with Fontaine and Tishman, and I think we realized at that point that there was a synergy between our teams. And then another reason the job went well from our perspective is because with MGM coming into town, not having worked in this market before, we didn't know exactly what to expect. But we found that MGM and Tishman, everyone we've been involved with has been absolutely first class in terms of owners, developers, contractors. They've stressed and delivered on their commitments to diversity, to hiring local contractors, to safety. We've been just blown away and very impressed by their commitments and their expertise. So that good experience with MGM and Tishman on the garage, and again, finding that our team, I'm sorry, on the rescue mission, finding that our teams worked well together, translated into us deciding to partner with Tishman on the garage, and ultimately being awarded the project, which we're obviously very excited about. As a local firm and as a local employer and as a local business in the city, we're excited about the economic development that MGM is bringing to the region, and we're very excited to be part of the project and to also work with MGM to bring other local firms like us into the project.
I think, you know, as one commissioner, I think early on, we were worried about the size of the project, excluding some of the local contractors from participating in the project. We heard it from the building trades, you know, they'd be getting kind of the tail end of the employment opportunities, but, you know, using somebody local and kind of, as Brian has always talked about, piecing this project or laying this project out in individual projects, I think has given, you know, Fontaine is certainly a well-known local name, but giving the local companies the opportunity to be part of the project and hire locally, which is great.
Is that how you work? Is that the relationship that you'll take pieces of the Tishman will take pieces of the project and give it to Fontaine, or what's the operational relationship between the two companies?
Between Tishman and Fontaine on the parking garage?
Yeah. Well, no, just in, so the deal with Fontaine is for the parking garage?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I got it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we need to preserve a little bit of our negotiation power, so they won't, that partnership isn't necessarily going to happen on every component.
Right.
But certainly, we found two really good partners.
Although if you wanted to.
Great.
And from our standpoint, you know, Fontaine really helps with the dialogue of local subs who may, you know, there may be some hesitation. Do I want to bid this project? Because, you know, will MGM pay in time? And if they don't, it's a lot of, you know, outflow of cash. And so some of that dialogue in us being fair to these guys trickles down into the market and helps that dialogue, you know, move forward.
Great.
So we're looking forward to it. We're excited to make this announcement and, you know, shortly here, get some foundations in the ground for the
So
parking
like
garage.
in the next quarter, you're talking about foundations?
For the parking garage, that's correct.
For the- yeah.
Yes.
So you mentioned it's a design build. Is there anybody in your team that's designing as well?
Yes, sir. Tim Haas is. Yeah.
That's great.
And so Tishman, on the design build, you know, we had bid out a bridging document set, which lays out certain parameters.
Yep.
But the detail and the actual drawings will be completed by their team.
Sounds good.
Great.
So on schedule, I think just what's important to note here is we're giving you our monthly updates. We're on track for the September 18 opening, and we've started walking the site with the staff once a month, right after those updates come out. So if there's any questions, Tishman and their team do that walk, and we can answer them right there and status the schedule live. On diversity, I understand our team was in front of you not too long ago here on a comprehensive update of everything we're doing. Just through quarter end, some of the highlights, WBE's project goal of 10%, current commitments are 16.6%, MBE's 5% goal, current commitments are 9.9%, and on VBE's project goal 2%, current commitments are 6.2%. And here, you know, I think it's worthy noting, to date, we have 56 companies with commitments on this project that are diverse.
If I can just pause, you know, these statistics are really remarkable, and we don't get to them by accident. We've got Brian's focus on his bidding process, and he can be tyrannical with some of these requirements. So everybody in the subcontractor community knows you don't come to our bidding process without a strategy on diversity. And you've heard mention of Shalon Brown, who I'm personally proud to have identified in some of my early days in the community as someone that knows the community, and we've given her this task as a dedicated position, is to make sure we find diverse contractors. So I just want to commend Brian and the team. It's really pretty remarkable.
It's a very, very impressive performance.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It is, and does that include the award of the contract that you just mentioned, or is that not yet caught up?
It does.
It does.
Actually, I'm sorry. For this quarter, I'd have to go look for you. I know in the April numbers, we did report that.
Okay.
So since we're a month behind here, I'd have to research that for you. But in our last report, AOC last week, it was included, the full garage award.
Yeah. I heard incidentally, I didn't come to that meeting, but that the rest of the committee was also very impressed with the report that you made.
Yeah, it was great.
And the last qualifier, with that, I think is, these numbers will move, and we won't necessarily maintain this level of performance exceeding our goals throughout the project at every milestone, but the commitment is here, and we'll continue to strive to meet and exceed these goals.
Great.
And then typically, just quickly, we also break down for you then the spread between design and construction. Our plan requires us to report the combination, but just so you can see where design's tracking, 10 versus 11.3 on WBE, 5 versus 8.4 on MBE, and 2 versus 4.1 on BBE. And then there's usually a question on what are the companies, where are they from, who's actually been paid since these are commitments. So we highlight in green anyone who has actually received certified payment on the project. And on construction commitments, the exact same treatment. And you'll notice, a lot of local folks on these slides. So those were commitments, and we kind of have two parts to our plan, commitments and dollars versus workforce. So workforce is a calculation on hours worked in the field. The goal is 6.9%. Current project total to date is 10.56%. On minority, 15.3%. Project to date, 28.35%. And on veteran, 8%. And project to date is 8.65%.
It's impressive.
And so with the diversity summary, I'll turn it over to Seth for the cost estimate update.
So, Commissioners, I'll be brief. This is our quarterly report on where we stand financially incurred to date versus our estimates. You'll see we've incurred just over $200 million overall to date. I will touch on 2 points of note, and then happy to address any questions. And before I do that, let me just highlight that this is a Q1, so these are figures through March 31st of 2016. So for instance, the number which I'm going to talk about now, the building construction number, as Brian's continued to make progress over the past couple of months, that number incurred to date continues to rise. But this quarter report is where we saw a real increase in that first line item, the building construction design number, which is now at approximately $32 million versus a total estimated spend of just under $500 million on the hard construction. Obviously, FF&E and OSE will come later. So I just want to touch on that $32 million spent, and that's really been spent. And Brian, there's some early money spent, but that's really been over the past, say 6 months, and really accelerated in the first 3 months of 2016. The other item I'll just touch on, which shows an increase from our previous numbers, is the financing costs, capitalized interest. As Brian's team was released to start construction, they commenced a process where they'll do a quarterly analysis of cash flow and cash expenditure. And so on a quarterly basis going forward, we're going to be able to have more precisely look at the cash outlay and be able to determine this, what is really an accounting metric, capitalized interest. But due to those more in-depth reviews, we've made a determination that internally our cap interest number is going to be more in the neighborhood of $68 million versus $45 million, which we previously reported. And incurred to date on that is $6.4 million. Again, that's that number is more of an accounting metric because it's we're using cash off the balance sheet, so it doesn't any increases in that number don't necessitate cutbacks in other areas of the budget, but we've reported it from day one in our FA2, and I know there have been some previous questions on it. So as that number fluctuates quarterly, we'll continue to update it, incur to date, as well as our projections.
You know, Seth, let me just add, Chairman Crosby, you might remember our last meeting on this. I think you and Commissioner Zuniga challenged us on that line item because it was a little counterintuitive. We had increased the budget, but that number had moved slightly down. It was that line of questioning and some other parallel activities internally that led us to go back and look at an updated accounting for that figure, and that's where we landed here. So wanted to recognize that we had given you a different number, and it was part of the inquiry that led us to go back and challenge it a little bit.
Seth, remind me, what is OSE on line item 3? What does that stand for?
Supplies and equipment.
If you've no other questions, I think I'm going to conclude with the fun part, the church relocation. As you know, it's hard for MGM to do a presentation without a sexy video. I don't know if sexy and church relocation is appropriate. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend. I know Commissioner Stebbins was here for it, and we've got
Commissioner McHugh came out too, didn't he?
And Commissioner McHugh came out. So we have a short video to show you what occurred that day on an expedited basis. Go ahead and play.
This is a nice mix of being able to move a nearly $1 billion economic development project that's going to generate jobs, vendor spin-off, supplies, materials, and preserving historic preservation and working together. On behalf of my colleagues, we're pleased to be here. We're pleased to, again, acknowledge this moment as continuing evidence of MGM's strong commitment to bring this project to completion, bring in the jobs and the revenue that I think the legislative statute envisioned when they created the gaming statute.
It's the start of major economic change for Springfield. For years now, all we wanted to see is economic development for the city. As a native of this community, I was honored to have found a partner who shared my vision and the vision of many of my friends and colleagues.
The location marks an exciting milestone for this project. We will begin the process of slowly moving this building, 2 football fields, to its new location in the MGM Springfield Entertainment Block. It will be located where we'll bookend the outdoor marketplace and the ice skating rink. About 100 feet from where we currently stand, towards Main Street, will be the center of the casino floor. I want to thank Tishman Construction and Wolf House and Building Movers who have been contracted to oversee this complex task. The building has been placed on high-tech dollies that Wolf specially designed and built in-house. And so today we move the church, which, as I always talk about, one of the most important moves to clear the sandbox and get the rest of this site ready for what we need to do. So we thank everybody for coming here today. And we look forward to inviting you back as we hit other key milestones throughout this project.
It's great. I've said this before, but I hope MGM gets some credit somewhere along the way for the historic preservation. I know you had to negotiate to get even more. But I just don't, maybe I'm naive, but I don't remember any development projects that have done as much historic preservation as you did in the first instance that you volunteered, and then you got beat up for a while. But I think it's just amazing. And I happen to love that stuff, so I'm particularly appreciative of it. But I just don't think anybody else pays that much attention to the kind of historic values that you have, and I hope you get credit for it because it's terrific.
I have to tell you, it was a pretty amazing experience. And Brian started speaking, and there was no kind of firing the gun to start the church moving. It started moving, and think everybody was sitting, is that moving or is that me? But, and, you know, Mr. Chairman, you can appreciate trying to stand up there and, you know, share remarks with a group that has no interest in what you're saying, more interest in the church moving
watching the
behind you.
building.
It was pretty incredible.
How long did it take? It is pretty incredible. How long did it take in real time?
So it was on the pad that night, and then the wheels were moved the next day.
And you thought it was going to take like 3 days.
Yeah, originally the projections were about 2 days, and then with some other stuff, it could have been 3. And I think from the contractor standpoint, it was a really nice day. If things were going well, you want to try to get it wrapped up. So, so over the course of the day, you know, we could watch it from the office, and it landed probably at 5 or 6 that night. So,
And is it now on its final foundation, or is it waiting to be?
So it's off the wheels.
Yeah.
And there's probably still some existing cribbing out there, and we're working on getting the foundation in to support the walls.
Brian, were there challenges? Did anything not go according to plan?
I'm sure there were. They did not get back to me.
Oh.
But so in my world, usually no news is good news. But I think the biggest challenge actually prior to the move we did come across was from the geotechnical reports that some of the soil we were going to be going over could not support necessarily the weight of the church. So,
all those plates.
so that's why you see the steel plating. We investigated a couple different scenarios. Do we, lay down a better sub base, or do we? Because the church has to go at a certain slope. You can't just, go with the existing contour that was out there. So, after the regrading and looking at geotechnical, we ended up steel plating along the way. So the plates, that's why you see them kind of move with the church. And so that was something, the challenge that did come up ahead of time that was addressed. So.
And is Wolf a local builder, or?
They're actually out of Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Amish country,
Yeah.
believe it or not.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And, we happen to have a couple of the parishioners from the church at attendance at that event. So I think it was pretty special for them to see the building preserved, even though they've relocated. So hopefully we're delivering on a little bit of the wow, that intangible wow that you've always.
That was a serious wow.
Sure is.
Thank you.
Brian, what was the propulsion?
I'd have to have Eric, I kind of described it as going to watch the shuttle at Cape Canaveral go to the launch pad, right?
Yeah.
and the speed of that.
But did you have an engine underneath? I couldn't see
I believe it's hydraulically powered, yeah.
Who was steering? I couldn't see anybody steer. Was there somebody behind it?
Basically a big iPad. It wasn't an iPad,
Oh,
but it
really?
was, yeah.
It was
Remotely?
cool.
So actually, in one of the
wheels were
pictures that you
talking.
see on the beam, there were a couple screens, and they,
Yeah, there's no one actually in the bed, in the foundation driving, right?
I believe they're right next
Yeah.
to it while it's moving.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very
So-
cool.
Really cool.
Tell Jim Murren we're excited. It's cool.
I will. I'll pass that on.
All set? Thank
Thank
you very
you.
much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, it's noon,
Thank
perfect
you.
timing. Is 45 minutes enough? Take a 45-minute break, and we will be back at 12:45. It is now about 12 minutes of 1. We are reconvening public meeting number 191. We are going to switch the agenda items around and now go to agenda item 6, Executive Director Bedrosian.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners.
Afternoon.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for correcting me. How time flies. The only agenda item from me actually is to turn it over to Mr. Len and Ms. Ballou to give you our quarterly budget update.
You don't have any administrative updates after all these 2 weeks? Nothing's happened?
We are, I think, I'll report that staff is rested and excited to go on our new future.
Great. Perfect. Thank you for the update.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
I'm here to, Agnes and I are here to provide you with our third quarterly update on our budget. It's going to be a brief budget update. Thankfully, things are going somewhat as expected and planned. The summary is our revenue estimates are going to be revised down with this update by $570,000. Spending estimates are also being revised down by $1.08 million, which will result in an overall $510,000 decrease to our budget. I'm recommending an adjustment on the assessment right now. I'll get into that a little later, indirect costs, uncertainty there. But I just wanted to give a quick overview. At the beginning of the year, we started at a $28.3 million projected budget with $28.3 million in spending, and the $26 million in revenues and $22.2 million assessment on our licensees. Since then, we've revised our spending down with this quarterly adjustment to $26.87 million. We'll have projected revenues of $27.7 million, which results in a surplus of $863,000. The two items that brought our revenue down were also had corresponding cost decreases, and they all had to do with Regency. Beginning of the year, we projected $800,000 for consultant costs to review the Regency applications. We brought in revenue, and we're expecting expenditures of $580,000 for that project. Correspondingly, we had projected $400,000 in grants for Regency to the local community to review the impacts, and we only spent $50,000 on that. So those two items came down. Two areas that we're still watching that we may have additional decreases in spending is the UMass ISA for responsible gaming, the cohort, and the baseline studies. Spending is behind right now, but we are told that they're ramping up on a few contracts that will spend significant amounts, so approximately $200,000 per month, and that this is their time that their salary really jumps because their professors get paid their regular salary as well as a piece of their summer salary. So you'll see that item jumping up too. So if you were looking through the expense budgets and you saw that Mark's budget and the PP was down, we're still watching it. We still believe that it's on target, but if they slip awarding one of those contracts, you'll see us after the fourth quarter coming back and saying there'll be a reduction in spending there. The other item we're still watching is the Attorney General's office. They turned back in $350,000 of their $1.9 million, and they've still spent, even turning that in, they've only spent $750,000 through the first 3 quarters, but they're going to have a few large equipment purchases, which will bump them back up. But if they don't get one of those pieces of equipment ordered on time or purchased, you'll see a reduction in their spending as well.
Anti-tank weapon? What kind of equipment?
So I guess it's surveillance equipment, so it's very costly, high-tech equipment that they're looking to purchase.
Let me say something, Derek, because it's a good presentation, but there's one item here that we did have control over, and that was the Regency evaluation.
Correct.
And I think that's a testament to the internal group here. We took internally the coordination in Janice and yourselves and Director Bedrosian. So our initial projection came down because, for the most part, this was efforts that we did internally. We still relied on consultants to a great degree for the evaluation, but it's a testament to good, efficient management that I just wanted to point out.
That's completely appropriate, Mr. Zuniga. Yeah. That $800,000 was a conservative estimate when we began, and the amount that the commissioners did cut down on the use of consultants, as well as the amount that Janice contributed by taking on that oversight role and coordination role, really drastically cut that down. We were hoping that it would come in at 800. Having it come in at 580 is a very good story.
Mr. Lennon, it sounds like you have a good relationship with our partners, and they're advising of their spend, and you're aware of, which helps you budget appropriately, I suspect?
Our partners with the licensees?
Well, you just mentioned UMass and the AG's office.
So I have had a few conversations with the AG's office. Commissioner Zuniga and Agnes meet with UMass as well as Mark almost on a monthly basis to go over their spending estimates. Agnes meets on a monthly basis with all of our directors to go over by line item, by contract, their spend, what we're anticipating. We run payroll every 2 weeks to make sure that we're projecting that accurately. And when we find that we'll have savings. You see them reflected on the quarterly updates. So we're trying to stay on top of it so that we don't have a big bump at the end of the year that we're turning in.
Good.
The one area that I want to touch on again is we're showing a surplus of $863,000, but I still think we have an internal deficit because of the indirect issue. We're being charged 10% of indirect costs on our payroll and consultants. Last year that amounted to $1.4 million, 1.2 of which came from the Game and Control Fund. So if you look at the 863 that we have right now, we still have about a $350,000 deficit that we'll have to make up before the end of the year. So we may be praying for some of these contracts to come in a little slower than anticipated. But I think those meetings have been progressing well. We had a meeting with A&F yesterday, discussed the finer points of it, and we hope to have another follow-up with them.
But it's perhaps fair to say that we should continue to, we should assume that that cost will be there for us, because we've had no
We've been going at it
unequivocal.
for 2 years.
Right, we've been at this now for a little while, as we do the project.
Quite the contrary.
Yeah. If nothing else, for the next year, regardless of the deficit, which is important, I'm thinking we should think about budgeting that for the following year and apportion it to the appropriate departments, because it hits different departments differently.
What is the status of the tribal assessment?
So for the tribal assessment, we've taken a look at the compact. We figured out the areas that we can develop a budget. And then there are still a lot of areas that we can't figure out until we sit down and have negotiations with them as far as what are we going to take on versus what they're going to take on. And we have to have those discussions before we can present a budget to them, for them to vote on and to approve. So I think we have a good understanding of what's allowable at this point. Now it's just what do you want to turn over to us versus what
you want to do yourselves,
Yeah.
right? Any impact, one way or the other, on the balance of this year, which isn't much, or on this 17 budget is not yet calculated, I gather.
Correct. So nothing, I don't see much on this year unless we get some discussions moving quickly. But on next year, it'll be just take a look at, once again, what they're going to let us do, figure out what the direct costs are, and then figure out what that overhead associated with providing those direct costs would be, which would be like we do with racing. I think we're charging off 5-point-some-odd% of our general administrative positions to the racing budget as a percentage of a total budget. Then we'll take a look at what the tribe is and charge off
But
appropriately that way.
that's in effect an income item.
Correct, it
that we
is.
don't yet have in our
That we
17
haven't,
budget.
correct.
Okay,
Yes.
so that's a piece of good news.
Yeah,
And are you-
that could very well be a revenue reflection.
Right.
With minimal or almost nothing in certain areas cost increase.
Right, that's what I'm getting
What are you
at.
getting
Right.
at?
So
Yeah.
apropos of our
Yeah,
other,
and
our
we're
other discussions.
in the process too of now, you get the quarterly budget update. Director Lennon and I and his staff are obviously working on our commercial side FY17 budget. And we'll also, at the same time, start those conversations with the tribe, as will, I think, the commission generally, to figure out what our responsibilities or co-relationship will be. And we'll start to build that. I assume we would come in front of the commission at some point too with a suggested tribal budget.
Yeah, okay.
And that's payable by them, by the tribe in advance, is that right?
Yeah, my memory of the compact, Commissioner McDonald, is it is, and that we also are sort of obligated to have a projected budget with them in place. And I think now what you have are sort of two entities, the tribe and their operator and us, who are in the startup mode about tribal gaming. So I think we just have to get together and have those conversations.
Okay. Anything else on that topic?
Well, in your packet, you have our normal attachments, the quarterly Spending, we cut the spreadsheet down so people could read it, so it just shows actuals through 3/31. If you want to see it by month, it's available on the website in the regular budget section. You have the adjustments in detail that we're recommending for this quarter, that we, since it's not adding any additional money, that unless you object to anything, we're going to approve. And then you have the expense budgets by division, so you can see where each division is as a percentage of their total budget, either spent or committed. And committed, once again, is spending plus open contract amount for the year.
One of the areas that I know you do, and I'd be interested in having us look at, is how we apportion costs of certain commission costs on racing versus gaming. I know there's a 5 and change %. I know there's a methodology behind it, but if we can come back and true up, or especially as we think about the next fiscal year, and I know there's a lot on that end that is in a bit of a state of flux, but but there's revenue coming in as well. So
correct.
It's something that we should continue to analyze.
Correct. So we do freshen that up each year based on the last year's spending. And that's what we presented to the licensees. They were all right with that as well.
Okay.
And what we try to do is, if it's space costs, we'll take the actual space of those people working for racing and charge them off, and not try to charge off a piece of ours. But we could always do that too. It's just how much of the racing budget can afford it. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Good. Is that it?
And now I'm going to turn over to Agnes for a quarterly update on our diversity.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
In your packets, you have our supplier diversity program benchmarks for the fiscal year. And to date, through the third quarter, it also includes our spending as well as the encumbered amounts for to date. And currently, we have reached and surpassed our benchmark for the small businesses. We'll continue to working towards our benchmark for the minority and women-owned businesses. In those two categories, we still have 2 large contracts that we will be winding down, and they will be coming off of those categories. And with those reductions and our current projections and adjusting the benchmark accordingly with Derek's budget decreases, we look to come in at about 82% for the women-owned businesses, and it looks like we might actually come in, 82% on the minority-owned businesses, and that we will still probably meet the women-owned business goal. We continue working towards getting both of those to 100%. We're working diligently with Director Griffin to identify any new businesses that we can work with between now and the end of the year. And Sarah Ganji has worked tirelessly trying to identify new and existing vendors that could fill those gaps for us.
So remind me of the percentage calculation. So if I'm looking at minority-owned, we take the discretionary budget, because we've excluded
right.
items that we have no control over. Multiply that discretionary by the benchmark, 7%.
By the 7%, correct.
And the benchmark would be in dollars, 648.
Correct.
And what you're reporting is we've encumbered
1.3 million.
But spent 383?
Right, and one of those is a large OPM, one of the OPM contracts that will be going away.
Yes.
So what we need to do is
We're going to
revise
revise those benchmarks.
our estimates, which will
Yes.
then bring the benchmark spending down. The benchmark
Right.
will stay at 7%,
Yes.
but our discretionary money, since we're moving away from the OPM that we had set at the beginning of the year at 700,000,
Yes.
down to the actual spend, which would be closer to 250 or 3.
Yeah.
That'll drop it down. We're still not going to hit the 100% goal based on just that by revising that, but it'll bring our anticipated from 78 or 80 up to 82, which means we still have a lot of work to do. We've been inviting Jill to all of our RFR meetings.
Yes.
Whenever we have a new procurement going out the door, whenever we have something that we're looking to, we've been inviting Jill, because we're meeting that area where we're having a hard time finding vendors that are competitively pricing. So it may be a change in policy that we have to make to meet these goals, that we're not always going to go with the lowest bid. A best value is meeting this benchmark. So that's something we're discussing as well.
Are we using all the tools that we are having our licensees use? All the support organizations out there? For example, the group that's meeting, the Hispanic American Institute is partnered with Chelsea Chamber of Commerce or something like that. Are we using the same resources?
We haven't gone to that level. We're bound by the Supplier Diversity Office, because that's who's responsible for it, for the state. That's who registers everyone that we can get credit for. The piece that we can look at is if we want to open up our definition and say that they don't have to be registered with the Supplier Diversity Office of the state, and then we can take a look at some of our sub-consultants to our prime consultants are, to see if we capture them as far as the diversity spend. I'm saying that as an option. I'm also saying that with that will come a lot of legwork to figure out and create that inventory and database and certification. But I'm not saying it's not possible.
Yeah, well, and as we're unrelenting with our licensees in insisting that they make that effort. And, you know, we frequently find vendors who are minority-owned or women-owned who aren't registered, and we get them registered, and we help get through the process. So we can't use a different standard for ourselves than we use for our licensees.
Well, a big problem with that, and this is an area that we get into when we adopted 801 CMR 21, just because we get them registered doesn't mean we can use them. If there's a statewide contract, we're bound by 801 CMR 21 to use statewide contracts before we go out and do a competitive procurement. So unless they're on that contract, which is a frustration I have run into many times. I mean, I was a secretary at Supplier Diversity Office for Housing and Economic Development, and I can't tell you how many times I had vendors come up to me at these events and say to me, well, I'd love to give my service, here's my certification. I had to say to them, there's nothing really I can do. And then they get frustrated, why did I spend my money to get certified?
We're not limited to statewide contracts, are we?
If we adopted those procurement rules, which we did, we're going into the competitive pricing of using those contracts. So the people who applied, who followed all those rules, get first preference. If we can show that they aren't meeting our needs, and maybe this is one of the areas where we say the vendor list isn't meeting our needs, we can apply to OSD for a waiver from using their contract.
This is a little bit of the, the steady state in which now we kind of find ourselves from decisions with them before. Yeah. And, and the fact, what maybe kind of like, what's really behind some of this is the fact that we're thinking about eliminating the two largest contracts that we had with a minority firm and a woman firm. And those were the OPM firms. And I think it makes sense for us to do that because of the life cycle of where we are, that there was a business case early on. We hired Joe, and we have other, we've got other evolved in some ways as to what we want to do and how we want to do it. And that begins to, limit our ability in the discretionary amount that we have.
But you're right, Chairman. We have a lot of work we can do. Yeah, There's a lot more we can do, and that's what we're trying to do with Jill. Figure out where those opportunities are.
Okay. I mean, to pick up on the chairman's point, we allow our licensees to look at CWE registration, Greater New England Minority Supplier Development Council certification. Oftentimes, you won't find them certified in both the woman-owned, the woman agency or the SDO. So. Yeah,
but our licensees are not bound by the 801 CMR procurement regulations that we adopted.
So one of the things we can do, and Catherine and I have talked about this, is come to you with a recommendation of what areas of 801 CMR 21 to follow and what areas we would want to exempt ourselves from. And once you make a rule of it and it's well written out, it clears up a lot of these issues.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think that's something that if we can't meet the benchmarks this way, we come to you with a recommendation on how to open it up so that we can, with still sticking with the major competitive procurement aspects of 801 CMR 21.
Okay.
It's good to see you're thinking of a way to succeed, right?
Well, it's the second year we've struggled with this, so we have to find some way to get to the point where we're 100% compliant with our benchmarks.
Derek, without getting into too much detail on it, how could you summarize what 801 CMR 21 requires?
So what 801 CMR 21 requires is that there's always competitive procurement. You make yourself open to as many people as possible, and that OSD, Operational Services Division, is designated by the governor as the entity that will set out the regulations and the policies to comply with the regulations for competitive procurement in Massachusetts. And a lot of the stuff that they throw out are the statewide contract list, so they're the designated agent for procuring those. They're the ones that send out these benchmarks, set them for the year. They're the group that came up with the Supplier Diversity Office and registering people and the background qualifications for registering those people and who would qualify, what financials they had to submit. So that's a lot of what originated from that. It's a competitive procurement rule for the Commonwealth.
So it's a comprehensive regime and
Yeah.
structure for
purchasing
managing
in
the
the
procurement
Commonwealth.
process through?
And by adopting them, we have the flexibility, for example, whenever some purchase need comes up, to first go to the approved state contracts and just pick a firm that has been pre-qualified or qualified.
And we're obliged to do that, is that right?
We are obliged, yes. If we don't do it, one of the exceptions in their policy is to write to their general counsel and the purchasing agent and provide a reason why their statewide contract doesn't work for us. And then they will make a justification of whether that's accurate or not, or whether we've met that standard if it doesn't work. And then they'll give us the approval to either procure something on our own, or they'll tell us, nope, go back and ask another group of vendors. So that's happened to us a few times.
And we did competitive procurements on
Yeah.
our gaming consultants, our outside counsel when we
Yep.
started. We continue to do them, and part of my earlier point was I think we're going to see less and less of that, just because of where we are. Less competitive procurements that we'll conduct as we continue to mature.
Less and less of managing the procurement process through this
No.
centralized? Or
No, less and
more?
less of our own competitive procurements. I think it was very understandable for us to do that when we procured unique gaming consultants, for example. There's there's no statewide contract for gaming consultants.
There is now.
There is now.
Should be.
There wasn't when we started. A lot of the costs that are in the horizon for us, there's a lot of statewide contracts that we can tap for, that we can look at.
Okay. Anything else? All set?
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
So we are back now to item 6.
Item 5.
You're done, so back to item 5, right. Director Van der Linden.
All right, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay, the first agenda item I have for you is an update on Play My Way, which is our play management tool that will be launched right now, expected to be at the end of this month, but I'll give you an update on that timeline as well. I think this is coming along beautifully. I think it's a great tool. I think you'll appreciate the presentation. Granted, it's not as cool as picking up and moving a church, but at the same time, the effort to move this forward has been significant.
Similar. It weighs about the same as the church.
That's right. What I'm going to do is just kind of walk you through each of the screens that you would see as it would show up on a slot machine at Plain Ridge Park Casino once we launch. Understand that what I'm showing you is one type of screen that you would see. And that would be what's called the DM screen, which is a screen that basically it's the large picture slot machine. There are two different types of screens that are on the floor, though, at Plain Ridge Park Casino. The other is the iView or LVDS. And if you recall, you saw this in December, that LVDS screen is much, much smaller. And so while it looks like there's plenty of space on this screen, it does look different on that LVDS or small screen. And but I assure you, as we've been testing this, we've taken a look and made sure that the product that we're developing fits well onto that small screen, and that players can see it and easily move through it. So what you have is the introduction screen in front of you, and this is the screen that a player would see in a couple different scenarios. The first would be right after they sign up for a marquee reward card or player card. Mind you that this is a tool only for marquee reward players. We're calling it's a benefit of joining marquee or being a marquee reward member. And so as soon as an individual would put their card into the machine, this screen would pop up on half of the screen. And you can see that Play My Way basically kind of takes over half of the screen. The other half of the screen is the slot machine. Another way in which a player would see the Play My Way is on the first day of launch. When they first sit down and put their card into the machine, they will get this screen. Another way in which they could find this screen is through enrollment at a GameSense kiosk. It's intended that, and as approved by the Commission back in, I believe, the end of 2014, that we wanted to have many ways in which a player could enroll and Play My Way. Through a slot machine, with a GameSense advisor, through a GameSense kiosk. And that's the product that we have now. The final way in which somebody would see this screen is you can kind of see it at the very bottom. It's the carousel, and you could see the Play My Way icon. And so say, for example, an individual declines to enroll at one point, but a week later says, yes, I want to enroll. They can tap the Play My Way icon at the bottom of the screen, and this screen would come up for them. Also, it's adopted by the Commission. It's intended that we want to introduce Play My Way, provide this as an option, but we don't want this to become a burden or something that they would see every time they sit down at the machine. So if somebody says return to game, the slot machine takes over the full picture, but this screen would pop up for them once every 30 days. And again, this was an issue that was contemplated or directed by the Commission from the onset.
Mark, I thought I remembered, I think we've talked about this before. So first screen you get, you put your marquee rewards in for the first time, it's this. I thought there was the first screen had a question, do you want to use Play My Way? And because we had then talked about, am I wrong? Was it never a question? It was always.
There was a placeholder screen very early on, and it looked like it served that purpose, but this is actually the first screen that an individual would see.
Because that's all the more reason why the marketing launch is important, because they say introducing Play My Way, and they say, I don't want to be introduced to Play My Way. What's Play My Way?
Right.
Whereas if it said, do you want to use Play My Way, then at least, there would be some text that says, so it's all the more that they've got to be aware of it when they first when they sit down with their marquee rewards card.
Correct. And Elaine and I will talk about kind of a very robust promotional campaign that it's our goal that when somebody sits down, when this is launched, that they won't have a question about what Play My Way is or what this screen is, and that we'll provide a lot of opportunity to talk about it and promote it.
Would it be assumed, Mark, that when people apply for their Marquee Rewards card, that Play My Way will be specifically described to them at the time?
Yeah, my hope is that there will definitely be literature within the packet of information that they get, and part of the training that I'll be doing over the next couple weeks is meeting with player services to talk about how they introduce Play My Way as well.
Mark, do we know the percentage of players at the casino that have the Marquee Rewards card?
Yeah, we do.
Ballpark, do you know?
Roughly, I don't know what the percentage is, but I know what the number of active Marquee Reward players they have.
I remember a figure around 60%, but that may be an industry-wide, not necessarily a Plainridge.
Right.
I thought it was much higher than that.
You thought it was higher?
We can find out.
I know I've asked the question before, and I think it's probably changed. So I think I recall a 60% number, but that was a while ago.
That could very well be an industry.
Yeah.
Once you have table games too, and so who knows
Right.
what's.
So without getting into the actual number that they have, I'm not sure I can share that just for protecting that for them. What my anticipation is that there is a certain percentage of their Marquee Reward players that spend an average of $50 or less per day. Given that we have an incentive and this may be a more valuable tool for them, my hope is that we capture between 10 and 30% of those customers that would spend that in that price range per day when they're gaming at Plainridge Park Casino.
And you think that the lower spend is more apt to use this? Is that the history?
And again, this is all speculation, mind you, because this has not been rolled out in the United States previously. But for a couple different reasons, I think it may be a more attractive tool. One is it may be a group that is more likely to monitor the amount that they spend, first and foremost. Another is that we have an incentive that goes along with enrollment in Play My Way, and that incentive may be a more attractive offer for them than perhaps players who spend more.
That makes sense.
Okay. So if you click enroll, if you hit return to game, the game takes over. If you hit enroll, you go to a terms and conditions screen. Any of the verbiage that you see on these screens has all been language that we've worked very closely with Elaine, with Mike, with our advertising company, More Advertising. And it's a very concise, limited way in which we talk about Play My Way. We want to keep the message of what it is and how to use it as simple as possible. And so you will see language throughout here that is also translated through various types of promotional items that we have. So again, if somebody wants to continue through the enrollment, they're asked to enter their Marquee Reward number or PIN number. There's a very brief 1 to 2 seconds processing screen that comes up, and then it goes to set your budgets. Individuals can set either a daily, weekly, and or monthly. You can set 1, or you can set 2, or you can set all 3. And in order to do that, you would push the set button on the right-hand side there, and it would take you to this screen, a very easy-to-use keypad. And again, at any point, if you decide that you're in this and then you don't really want to use it, you can X out and return to the game. You can X out either through the green button or in the top right-hand corner. And once you do, you get an enrollment successful screen. And it directs you to the GameSense Information Center, where they would receive a $5 food credit for any food vendor at Plainridge Park Casino. And that's the extent of it. It could be more complicated if what I walked you through is if somebody sets a daily budget. If you want to set an additional budget, you want to set a weekly or monthly budget, you would go through that process 2 additional times before you would get to the enrollment successful screen. One,
Mark, the $5 reward doesn't seem to me to be an awful lot. Did that figure come up, from us, or was that what Plainridge said that they were willing to?
that is a number that came from us, but I do have to tell you that
We pay it.
we pay that, and it is credited back to Plainridge Park Casino. I think incentivizing it, when we looked at major barriers to this type of program in other jurisdictions, the 2 things that popped out, and I think I've mentioned this before, is enrollment, getting people to use it, and measuring its effectiveness. And I think that in order to get a maximum enrollment, we really wanted to pay attention to the incentives and how we promote it, both of which I feel strongly that what we have, at least at the onset, is a very solid program to maximize the enrollment in the program.
I'd be completely supportive of that. It just doesn't seem like $5 would get you much more than a Coke.
Yeah.
Coke's free.
Huh?
It's a big
Coke is free.
It's a big Coke.
Coke is.
Coke is free at Plainridge.
Oh, okay.
I would say that at our game sense information.
Half a beer.
At our game, well, it's only for food, not for alcoholic beverages. Our Game Sense Information Center, I know that any of the promotional items that we have there to hand out that would have a value of far less than $5 are very popular with patrons that visit the casino.
Mark, when the example you've got here is the person has chosen to set their daily budget. They enter $50. Now, if they want to set their weekly budget, how do they do that?
They would go back, and it would then set
So
them
you
to
don't
the
push,
weekly
you don't
budget.
push enter. So you'd push your $50, then you'd push back.
I'm
I think
sorry.
that's going to cause people a lot of confusion.
Well, let's.
I remember that you enter the 50, it would go back to, if you
It would go
pushed
back,
enter,
that's right.
it defaults to that screen again.
No, yeah, actually, you're right, Commissioner. It does. It goes back. And when it goes back to this screen, the next button is activated. And you can see the next button on this screen, because nothing has been entered, is not activated.
Okay, so it's not right here.
Correct.
We've skipped a slide.
Right.
Okay,
I'm
good.
sorry. But
Yeah.
that's right. It does, after you enter, right now, you would press enter for the daily, or set for the daily. It would take you to this screen. You would press enter. It would return you to this screen. The next button would be activated so that you could actually go to the enrollment successful screen, or you could set a weekly and/or monthly budget.
Yes, you'd see a $50 on the first white box there.
Mhm.
And you
Correct.
could then return to game, reset, or set the weekly or monthly budget
Right.
if you wanted.
Yes,
And that's a wrench, as in adjust.
correct.
Yeah, the settings,
I first thought it was a lobster.
with very small arms, very small claws.
Cheap lobster.
Yeah.
Mark, where does it tell you that you have the option of doing all 3?
I believe it's in the,
The landing page, the first one. Oh, no, it doesn't.
we have it throughout our promotional materials, but I think that's a good point, Commissioner Stebbins, that we could add a line in there under the introducing Play My Way that would state that you could set a daily, weekly, and/or monthly budget.
And, yeah.
Yeah.
Give 'em the
There's a
option.
number of small content revisions that are sitting with Bally, who's our developer for this right now. Those at this point are pieces that we could continue to make requests that would be included prior to the launch.
And, the team here has worked very hard to try to find the right balance into non-verbose, there's a real estate screen Correct. Issue here, especially when you look at the small displays. So the more information we put in, the more that there's a risk for a patron to be turned off and say, oh, just get me out of here. And that's always been very thoughtfully trying to balance.
Right, yeah, it looks like there's plenty of space on here, but again, you take it back to the iView small screen, and that space is crunched down. I think, I mean, what I want is to provide people with the information they need in order to make a decision about whether or not they want to enroll. And as I've said, we have a lot of really important things to say about responsible gaming and ways to keep their gaming fun, but for the most part, it's not going to be captured on these screens because the real estate's very small. We continue to rely heavily on the staff at the casino and more importantly, our GameSense advisors to communicate the bigger picture of it. And what I've said before also, this is but one tool in which our games that would fall under the GameSense strategy, this much, much broader strategy that we have employed in Massachusetts to talk about responsible gaming and all the different kind of ways to principles of responsible gaming. And this is one tool. It's a really interesting tool, and I think it will be very interesting to see how it unfolds, but it is just one tool. Okay, so moving on then, there's a way in which to adjust your budgets. So if you want to adjust your budgets, and actually this is a screen where we have made a few changes, and I'm going to try to remember what those changes are to the best of my ability. So what you're seeing right now is a screen prior to the testing that I had done last week with some recommendations for changes. But before I explain that, let me just explain what this screen is. So if you want to adjust your budgets, you can do so at any time. And what it would do, it would tell you exactly what your current budget is, and then you can press the adjust button, and it would take you, let me see, it would take you to another keypad screen. And the keypad then would take you back to this screen so you could see what your new budget is. One of the changes, it wouldn't say actual budget versus my budget choices. It will say current budget and then new budget, so that there's not confusion about kind of what your current budget is. In addition, we're going to remove the reset button. That really all that does is it deletes all of your current budget choices. So in order to, again, try to keep it as concise as we possibly can, with as few buttons and options as possible to get persons from start to finish, we're looking at all of these different factors and ways we can make it easier to use. Okay. And once you do that, you get a budget successful screen. I wanted to take you back to the reminder screens. And again, there's a small change on these reminder screens that is in process right now too. So you get reminder screens at 50%, 75% as you approach your set budget. You will get a reminder at 100% and then 25%, every 25% thereafter. Play is not suspended. Play is not cut off. The machine does not freeze. An individual can continue to gamble if they choose to, and that was a very conscious decision by the commission that this is a tool for individuals to use. They can use it or not use it. We don't want to make it any type of create any type of penalty or barrier for them. What it is intended to do is to increase a patron's informed choice about their gaming decisions. So what you see right here is a screen that would say that you're approaching the budget that you had set. You've spent 50% of your budget for the day, and it would give you an opportunity to return to the game. Here is a screen that would indicate that the individual has hit 100% of their budget for the day. What we are going to add is another statement in there that would say that if you want to stop play, to remove your player card, and that would terminate the session for the individual. We want to create an option. You're at a crossroads, if you will, when you get one of these screens, and we want there to be a decision, an informed decision about whether or not they would continue to gamble or whether or not they would decide that because I've hit my budget, it's time to walk away. And so that's why I think that this screen, just in general, creates that crossroad, but adding the additional question in there or additional statement in there kind of further puts further makes that point.
And if, say you walk away, you go have lunch, but then you decide you want to continue, so you come back in a different machine and put your card in, would you get that screen immediately that said you have reached your budget limit? kind of?
That's correct. If you set, that's correct.
Okay.
You would get that screen. It would let you know where you stand. It's also important to note that these are approximations. When I say that you get a notice at 50%, 75%, 100%, the machine calculates that up to, I think it's 100% once every 3 spins of the reel. So you may be actually over 50%, you may be over 75% because it's only calculating it once every 3. After 100%, it's calculating it every single time.
Up to 75.
Up to 75, every single time you press the button, so that you get a much more accurate, clear picture of where you stand in terms of the budgets that you had set.
Because theoretically, if you push up, you're at 99%, you have a big loss. You push, you have a big loss. You're now at 110%, not 100. So,
and it'll give you the actual percent. So, for example, as the chairman points
gives
out, you would get a message that would say you are at 110% of the budget.
oh,
that you
so
set.
this one doesn't. So this one is a flexible one. The one that's when you get to 100, it'll give you what your actual is with that last spin.
Correct.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Does it slow down the machine at all to calculate?
No, there's no slowdown in the machine. The machine remains active. Even when you have a screen like this, the machine remains active. It just takes over half of the screen. So for example, you could get a message that you could adjust your budgets, and on the right side, the machine is still active, and you can continue to play, which is another feature that the commission had requested early on, is that we don't want to lock up the machine. We don't want to stop. We don't want to lock up the machine. So another important piece of this is the ability to unenroll at any time. So if an individual enrolls in it, they, for whatever reason, and then for whatever reason it is that they decide that this is not a tool that they want to use, we've always wanted to make it very easy for them to unenroll. But we want to get a little bit of information about why it is that they're unenrolling. What you see right now is a number of choices for them to unenroll. In the latest version that's going to be released, we've trimmed the number of reasons that an individual can state down to, I think, 7 reasons. Again, because when I saw this and we didn't want to have a scroll bar, we wanted it to fit on the LVDS screen. So we looked at the various reasons why which somebody could enroll and trimmed the ones that we felt were either redundant or less likely to be clicked.
Mark, remind me, were these, was the text in these also discussed with the Division on Addiction?
Correct, yeah.
I'm particularly interested in the one that says, I no longer have a problem with gambling.
Yeah, no, actually, you know, Commissioner Zuniga, these were this isn't what the Division on Addiction and the Gaming Commission had agreed to early on. When I got these screens, there were some other reasons that came from other jurisdictions that were pre-populated into this. So what we have is a very small set of approved reasons in which somebody wouldn't want to.
Does it have the bad experience with RG Ambassador?
No.
Okay, good.
In fact, that was the first thing that tipped me off, that we had the wrong set, is we don't refer to them as RG
We don't have
ambassadors.
RG ambassadors, right?
Do they have to at least check one box to successfully unenroll?
Correct, yes.
But one of them, is it prefer not to say?
Right,
Yeah, I believe it's so.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. And then you would get a screen that would say that your unenrollment is successful and you can re-enroll at any time. So the incentive is for first-time enrollees. So if somebody comes back for unenrolls and then comes back a second time, they're not eligible for that $5 incentive. So in addition to the Play My Way program that's launching, at the same time, we're going to offer a set of static screens, GameSense static screens. And so, again, it's hard to see down there at the bottom carousel, but you see the Play My Way icon, but you can also see the GameSense icon on the right side of that. And so what would happen if you hit that GameSense icon is again, it's a set of static screens that would provide information only for you, and it would launch into those. So it would provide information about the GameSense Information Center. It would provide information for you about Play My Way. And again, this is language that was adopted, that we had adopted in collaboration with Moore. It would provide some very basic information about how slots work and GameSense tips. What you don't have in front of you also is the shots from the GameSense kiosk, which I think are interesting. You can enroll and Play My Way from the GameSense kiosk. But there's also a number of different screens and ways to get information from the GameSense kiosk too. Commissioner Zuniga, Chairman Crosby last week tested it in a isolated gaming lab at Plain Ridge Park Casino. It's live on 2 test machines there. This doesn't, I feel, do kind of justice to one, kind of the ease of the tool, and 2, just what I think the value of the tool is. And I invite you to come down sometime over the next couple of weeks before we go live to test it, see it, use it, and I would be glad to kind of walk you through it at that point too.
We'll also be invited when we go live.
Yeah, definitely.
I'll be there on Tuesday, so I'd love to try it.
Great.
Did Bally's, they developed?
Correct.
Did they develop the Canadian model as well?
Yes, they
So
did.
did they have any feedback of this compared to, or I know you don't want to necessarily say this is better than their model, but did they have any feedback?
No, it's interesting how this is called pre-commitments, the Bally pre-commitment system, and it was a system that was originally developed for a jurisdiction in Australia, and so that became kind of the base model, and we received a lot of benefit from just taking that base model, but we also had a lot of our own specific unique requirements. And some of those specific unique requirements are then being transferred to other jurisdictions that are picking it up. So for example, in Canada, Bally also is working with the Ontario Lottery Group and the British Columbia Lottery Group. Both of them are lotteries as well as casinos to develop this exact same tool. It's live in Ontario. They did a test at one casino and are preparing, if not, they haven't already gone through the entire province. They're in the process of doing that. The British Columbia Lottery Corp is planning on taking, I think, what is very similar to this tool and taking it live throughout British Columbia sometime. It's either this summer or early fall. Their timeline, like ours, has shifted to some degree as well. So these GameSense tips, the static screen, was actually a function that was developed for British Columbia that we then adopted. And I think that there's some great lessons to be learned. What we learn in our evaluation can be applied to other jurisdictions. What other jurisdictions are learning, we certainly would want to consider and see if it makes sense for us in Massachusetts. The key point, though, is that this is all a test. This was adopted as a test, and a test to be evaluated before we would decide whether or not this is something that we would want to adopt and use throughout our licensees in Massachusetts. But that's as I hear very clearly, that's let's wait and see what the results of our evaluation are.
Great, looks excellent. Thank you, Mark.
One last piece, and I want to credit Mike Sangalang for this, and I thought this was great. Again, not as cool as moving a church, but still great. Is the Play My Way icon in the upper left-hand corner is this sort of dynamic icon where you can kind of see it sparkle or a star, and that is dynamic where it continues to kind of sparkle, and it's more of an animated piece than a static icon on the screen. So now going to the timeline. When I brought this to you originally, it was, or when I brought this to you last, it was in March, and we were getting ready to launch into a series of content revisions. Most of those content revisions are done. As you saw, there was a few that were lingering out there that we continue to work on. And that's really to be expected. So we've gone through a number of content revisions, both for the EGM, as well as for the kiosk. Last week, the Mass Gaming Commission went through user acceptance testing and training, obviously again with some additional changes. Right now, PIN, Plain Ridge Park Casino, is in a 2-week period of user acceptance testing. I think this week is the site is doing their user acceptance testing, and next week they'll have representatives from PIN Corporate that will be there to do user acceptance testing. The week of the 23rd, so a week and a half from now, we will go into an intense week of training where where Bally will be back out, and we will go into a number of trainings across all levels. Right now, I was adding it up. I have roughly 15 different trainings that I'll be doing, some of them in conjunction with Bally, and some of them just on my own, to talk about the program, what the value of it is, why it's there, and how to use it. So that the bulk of that will take place the week of May 23rd. It will be pushed out on May 30th to kind of the system. The idea that on May 31st, right now, the plan that we have is that it would be pushed out to the gaming floor, to 2 banks on the gaming floor, which is roughly, as I understand, 20 slot machines on May 31st. Those slot machines, those 2 banks, will be cordoned off so that we can go through additional intensive testing to make sure that when it's live and on the floor, that it's functioning as expected and everything works. This is a plan that I've worked out with Director Glennon as well as PIN on site. So I'm feeling good about that sort of test environment, both now as well as when it actually hits the gaming floor. And on June 1st, then, starting at 9 a.m., it would be turned on live onto the gaming floor.
And that will be a soft launch.
It will be live and on the gaming floor, and we will be staffed up for it.
Right. But we're not announcing it as a public event for sometime thereafter.
Okay.
Because we want to have, it's a soft launch, like early opening of a restaurant. So we try to get the bugs out before we really promote the fact that it's there.
Right.
So the press, if there's press coverage, it won't be that day.
So that's the update on Play My Way. I appreciate the help of We've had weekly calls on this. I've had numerous meetings with Bally, who's done a fantastic job and partner in developing this, and certainly with Penn, and providing feedback and trying to figure out where there are barriers to implementing this first of its kind type of program in the United States, to figure out how those barriers can be eliminated. And that's been great. And I can't imagine, without that cooperation, I can't imagine how we would be able to be successful at getting this actually even off the ground.
Beyond, Mark, beyond some of the free media, Elaine, what other avenues of promotion or highlighting this program are you thinking about?
Well, that's a great question that I think that I will turn over to Elaine to start talking about the promotional campaign to get the word out about this. Okay. If that's okay with you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So I'll be very brief because I think that we did already touch upon the vast majority of this information when we unveiled what the collateral and whatnot will look like. That's the collateral that we've shown you already is essentially the bulk of it. Since that time, we've added a few different style pieces and things like that, but they all have obviously the same look and feel. In the last couple of weeks, we've been working very closely with Plain Ridge Park Casino to establish a strategic timeline for the promotion, and then to also ensure a plan that prioritizes and maximizes customer experience. We obviously don't want to do anything that compromises customer experience while we're in the process of trying to roll this out. Plain Ridge had a lot of really great feedback for us in terms of how to determine the timeline and what types of materials to give to the customers, when, why, where. So we're in the process of doing all that right now. Essentially, all of the collateral has been developed. It's been sent to print. You know, we're printing upwards of, 30,000 pieces of collateral and things like that. Essentially, brochures and signage in a variety of different styles for, again, to be handed out in different types of venues. So whether it's at player services, the type of brochure they'll be getting, an employee poster for the back of the house, signage that will be hung up around the gaming floor, and things along those lines. So that's all been done. And basically, they wisely told us that we shouldn't start promoting around Plain Ridge until the employees have been trained up. So in other words, don't start hanging signs about things that the employees aren't aware of yet, which makes a lot of sense. So that training will be happening between the 23rd and the 27th. So coming soon signage will start going up during the course of that week. And we have Play My Way coming soon signage being developed right now. And basically that will be in the form of posters on the gaming floor, as well as we'll be sending just some files to Plain Ridge, and they'll be creating signage with our guidance for all the available digital signage that's around the facility. Mark and I are also scheduled to go out there next week just to make sure that we're not missing any signage opportunities. We think we know everywhere that we have the ability to hang a sign, but we just want to make sure that there isn't anything that we've missed. So we'll do a walkthrough next week to make sure that we're maximizing all available real estate for signage. And then, like I said, coming soon, signage being created right now, the email blast that will go out to all of the marquee rewards holders will happen. And they said, meaning Plain Ridge said, you really don't want to send that until right before it's live. So literally 2-3 days prior to it being live. Once it's live, the other thing that we'll be doing, which was a great suggestion from Plain Ridge, will be essentially creating almost a Play My Way, I'm calling it like a pop-up shop, inside the GameSense Info Center. So we'll transform the GameSense Info Center into like a Play My Way headquarters, festive environment with handouts and signage, balloons, all that type of stuff. That will be happening for as much as a week to 2 weeks during that rollout period. We'll also be doing a small advertising buy month of June, but it's small. And the reason for that is, although we obviously want to be able to create a general mass awareness of the fact that this program is offered at Plain Ridge, the fact of the matter is this is largely a direct marketing campaign, because those who can sign up, it's so targeted with marquee rewards holders that we want to make sure that that's where the vast majority of our efforts are. And then at the same time, as the chairman mentioned, there will be a media campaign that happens around this at the same time. All the materials will be ready to go, but we're going to have to be a little bit nimble in terms of deciding which day exactly we, hit send on the press release, because although we have an idea of when all this is rolling out, the fact of the matter is, before we do have a media day or anything like that, we do want some time to have a bit of a soft launch to work out any, anytime you roll out technology, there's likely to be a few kinks and growing pains and things like that. So we want a little bit of time to be able to work through that, and then be ready to move forward with a media campaign.
Fabulous. Other great comments?
No, very impressive.
Can I make one last comment? The staff piece and making sure that we provide additional staff support during the first week, possibly more, of the launch. That we're working with staff at MGC that are typically based out of the Boston office. We're working with the Mass Council on Compulsive Gambling staff that they have there that have been backups for our GameSense advisors, to provide additional staff support during that first week of the launch. It's so very important for us, both through the promotional campaign, but also that human touch, to make sure that if people have questions, if they want more information, that we're there to do that. And I think that I appreciate everybody's kind of putting forth that extra effort during that week or so to assure a solid launch of this.
And just to add one more thing too, that it's important to note, the GameSense Info Center, the good news is where it's located within the casino. They say that about 70% of people who are entering the casino enter through that way. So the good news is that we'll be able to touch a lot of people right at that entry point with the giveaways and we're giving away like different types of like swag. So, stress balls, lanyards, things like that are all Play My Way branded. But then what we'll also be doing, because the other issue is that you have a lot of people coming in at once and there's a lot of free things to take away. Logistically, one of the concerns is backup. So almost creating a bottleneck right at the entrance that could potentially happen. And again, helpful feedback from Plain Ridge in terms of for our consideration. So there'll also be another location within the casino, another table over by like the valet area that again gets the other 30% of mostly of those that are entering, but also is an additional place to hand out and inform people and whatnot, so that there's not a complete backup at the GameSense Info Center in the event that were to happen. Maybe it won't, but we'll be planning for it.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, excellent.
Very good.
Good.
I've got one more, Mark.
I do have one more.
Thanks, Lane.
Thank you, Lily.
Thank you.
It's the fiscal year 2017 gaming research agenda. I'm bringing that back before you. In December, I brought it to you for advice as we were kind of beginning to form this gaming research agenda. Section 71 of Chapter 23K directs the Gaming Commission to develop an annual research agenda. And so we look to how we can continue this research agenda on an annual basis in a way that provides us with the information we need to fulfill this section of the mandate. I have a memo for you that's in your binder that provides a little bit of background on Section 71. It also provides for you just a very brief explanation about the Public Health Trust Fund Executive Committee, which is the body that is chaired by our Chairman Crosby, as well as Associate Commissioner Lindsay Tucker from the Department of Public Health. It is this group that is charged with setting the annual budget and protocols for expenditures that will come from the Public Health Trust Fund. Now, mind you that the Public Health Trust Fund has not been established yet, but this group is still charged with setting the budget for expenditures for that would come from or fall under the umbrella of the Public Health Trust Fund. Also included in there is a brief explanation of each of the research projects that fall under the current research agenda. It's been a process to kind of whittle down the recommendations for the fiscal year 2017 research agenda. It included extensive conversations with our Gaming Research Advisory Committee, as well as our partner at the Department of Public Health. And it was brought before it was brought before our commission. It was also brought before the Public Health Trust Fund Executive Committee for advice. And on April 11th, when the Public Health Trust Fund Executive Committee last met, they adopted this gaming research agenda that I'm bringing before you today. So the research agenda that will be launched or continued mostly in fiscal year 2017. As you know, we have the study of social and economic impacts of gaming in Massachusetts. That continues to be a cornerstone study that we plan to continue. We have done an enormous amount of work with SIGMA. The deliverables that have been that we've received to date are outlined on page 1 of the memo, and on page 2 it talks about kind of what are the deliverables that are forthcoming. And a lot of those deliverables then will be carried into the fiscal year 2017 gaming research agenda. The agenda also includes a continuation of MAGIC, which is the Massachusetts Gaming Impact Cohort Study. This would be the second of the 2 cornerstone projects that we have underway for us to get a better picture of gambling behavior, but most specific of residents in Massachusetts, but more specifically of gambling behavior of individuals that are at risk or problem gamblers in Massachusetts, to better inform our strategies and plans for intervention and prevention. Another important project that we look to continue is the evaluation of responsible gaming initiatives through the next year. Play My Way is an incredibly important initiative that we plan to evaluate. That evaluation will dictate where we go in the future with this type of technology. The Game Sense Information Center is also an important evaluation piece, as well as the voluntary self-exclusion program. We also look to continue our study of the public safety impact that we do in collaboration with Christopher Bruce. We will plan to continue that in the Plainville area and begin to look towards expanding that into Springfield and Everett area. In fact, in the fall of this year, we plan to begin discussions with all the Springfield and all the surrounding communities to begin to pull together the baseline for that study in this part of the state.
So, Mark, the baseline for the Boston area casino and in Springfield has not been done yet?
No, it has not.
Okay, so that's,
Yes, that will be in the works in the near future.
The baseline,
Yeah, the targeted samples, you must mean.
the targeted sample
No,
for Boston is within the big sample.
No, I'm talking about the crime impact study.
Oh, the crime impact. Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
no, actually, I was asking about the, but,
Oh, okay.
wait a minute, baseline on
survey.
on everything, yeah.
Well, let me further explain that then. So we have a baseline of the entire state, a general population study of gambling behaviors, attitudes, prevalence of problem gambling for Massachusetts. It was a sample of roughly almost 10,000 adult residents in Massachusetts. Where we have licensees, we've said that we want to get a clearer picture on those specific areas. In the Boston area, the sample was large enough from the Boston area that we didn't need to go out and do a specific targeted sample on that area to get that clear picture. But for Springfield and Plainville, we did need to go out and do a targeted survey in those areas in order to establish that baseline.
Okay.
That has been done for Springfield and Plainville. Okay. And in fact, another part of the gaming research agenda for 2017 is to go back out and do another targeted survey in the Plainville area to get a picture of what has been the impact in that local area a year after the opening of Plain Ridge Park Casino.
Okay.
And then on
And
this,
the southeastern piece, the
Correct.
targeted sample.
The which?
The targeted sample of around Taunton is part of the fiscal year 17 research agenda.
Right.
Yeah.
Because now that's also an area.
So
there's
that's-
also the secondary data, the data collection for the secondary data, which is all the crime statistics and property values and all that other stuff. That's all been collected or is pretty near collected for the entire state.
correct. Yes.
So our baseline is pretty well set. We pretty well have all of our baseline done.
That's right, yeah. So we will be, in fact, we would plan to be in the field for the Taunton and surrounding community baseline targeted survey at the same time that we would do the follow-up targeted survey for the Plainville and surrounding community. There's actually a great benefit of being out in the field for both of those at the same time. There's a cost efficiency in doing that we'll realize through this process too. There's two additional parts to the gaming research agenda. One piece is required by statute, Section 97, that requires us to work with an experienced nonprofit research entity to collect, anonymize, store, and disseminate information generated by loyalty programs, player tracking software, player card systems, or other information systems. And we need, it was in the last research agenda for last year, but we didn't, we were unable to launch it at that time. We've had talks with our licensees, just kind of about some of the complications of that and making sure that the groundwork is set to launch that, and we look to then procure that in the next fiscal year. To some degree, that actually is going to already take place as we launch the evaluation of Play My Way. We will be collecting player information for individuals that enroll in Play My Way, as well as a sample of individuals to do a comparison study. And again, following the same piece, anonymizing the information so that we would never be able to track it back to the individual. The last piece of it is identifying a priority subgroup where further information is needed. And it's expected that the priority subgroup is largely, would be isolated or by an evaluation of the SIGMA baseline population survey, as well as additional research, and that we will work with the Public Health Trust Fund Executive Committee and other advisory groups to identify the specific subgroup that we would want to take a closer look at. And again, we would probably, the idea is that we will target an at-risk or high-risk group, high risk for a gambling problem, so that we have that information. We can develop more targeted types of prevention and intervention programs to those groups.
Can I ask, remind me, Magic last year had 2 waves, effectively. There was crossover of fiscal years a little bit. There was wave 2 remainder and wave 3 almost complete. Do you know, and I know that UMass has not yet provided us with the details of what they think the budget might be, but what is your understanding of whether we'll be doing only one wave versus more than one?
So,
Magic.
in terms of the Magic waves, the first wave was actually considered part of the baseline population survey, and that's from the baseline population survey. That's the sample that we drew for Magic. So we're able to call that wave 1. Wave 2 was roughly a year ago, and that was complete. So that's 2 waves that we would have, and they're in the field right now for a 3rd wave of Magic, trying to maintain consistent contact to make sure that we retain that cohort for as long as we possibly can. They would look, as I understand, in the next year to continue and follow the same pattern, that they would reach out to that cohort of roughly 2,300 individuals to do another wave.
To do one.
To do one wave, correct. And that I'm continue to work with UMass both on the Sigma project as well as the cohort study to kind of finalize those research plans. So it's somewhat tentative right now, but given the experience that we have with them, we're able to get a general picture of kind of what the scope and in turn budget would be for those projects. In fact, all of the projects that we have out there right now.
Any other questions, observations? Yeah.
There's one point that I do want to make. It's the Gaming Policy Advisory Committee. Now, Section 71 says that we would seek the advice of the Gaming Policy Advisory Committee as we develop this gaming research agenda. And for various reasons, the Gaming Policy Advisory Committee has not met in the past year, so we were not able to get their advice prior to adopting the Public Health Trust Fund Executive Committee was not able to gather their advice prior to adopting this research agenda. As I understand, the Gaming Policy Advisory Committee will meet sometime in June, July timeframe, and we will certainly reach out to them to capture advice on the gaming research agenda. Any advice that we would get for them, we would take back to the Gaming Policy Advisory Committee, and they could weigh and ratify the gaming research agenda if need be.
Are the members of that set by statute?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And the problem has been that there's somebody that's supposed to represent the municipalities and somebody that's supposed to represent the licensees. And to make a long story short, if they serve, they become a special state employee, which creates a conflict of, you remember this issue? Creates a conflict of interest within the state ethics laws. So they can't be advisors to us on the GPAC at the same time as they're serving their license, their company or their municipality. So we haven't been able to get anybody to fill those seats, and we therefore haven't been able to get a quorum for the meetings. So we've talked with the legislature about it, now talked with the Ethics Commission about it. The Ethics Commission has proposed a modest regulatory change that we have sent to the House and Senate and hope that they will pass it with something or other so that it exempts people from being special state employees for this particular function, to make a long story short.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I mean, it has been long.
It has been long, yeah. Okay, let's take a quick break, and then we'll have Director Lightbound and Mr. O'Neill come up for the last topic.
O'Toole, Mr. O'Toole.
It's O'Neill in the agenda, by accident. Ready to reconvene public meeting number 191 at about 2:15 on the 12th. We have one item left, Director Lightbound.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
So our first item on the agenda is the amended small business impact statement and the final draft of 205 CMR 149, the Racehorse Development Fund regulations. And I'll let Catherine Blue speak to that.
Thank you. You have in your packet an amended small business impact statement as well as the amended version of 205 CMR 149. And just to put it in context, the Racehorse Development Fund is established by the Gaming Act. It is one of up to 10 or so funds created into which gaming revenues that come to the Commonwealth are allocated. The purpose of the fund is to provide supplemental purse money for racing and to support racing. So we created regs under this section of 23K in order to get that money out to the thoroughbred and the standardbred racing tracks and organizations. So what you have in your packet is this particular regulation. It's been before the commission twice before. The changes in it that you see in red were predominantly changes that were made at the commission's suggestion when it came before you the last time. Since then, we've had our public hearing. We have the comments that we received prior to the public hearing and at the public hearing in your packet. The one big change that came out of the public hearing was that our stakeholders asked us to delete the requirement that there be a signed purse agreement before the commission pays over the purse money. And they explained that they wanted to have the right to race if they hadn't fully negotiated that. And I do believe they are the best groups to make that determination. So I have made that deletion in the regulation. You'll also see a deletion on the second page. It's paragraph 1B. That was deleted because when we brought this before the commission the last time, the commission was directed us to add language that said it was in your discretion when you wanted to pay out the purse money in terms of how much and when and how it was paid out. So 1B would have conflicted with that language in the balance of the regulation, so I took that out. But essentially, it is pretty much as it was before.
Questions?
Yep, so the committee, the Racehorse Committee, at this point, they determine the split between the two breeds, and the commission determines the other money issues, correct?
Yes, that's correct. The Racehorse Committee still has the obligation under statute to determine the split, but it will now be up to the commission to determine how the purse money is paid out. And as you did last year, for example, you entertained requests from the various tracks, and you reviewed them, and then you determined, whether that was appropriate and when to pay it out.
With regard to the purse agreements, I know we had an earlier conversation, this may be Dr. Lightbaum. They were close to both having purse agreements?
They both have them. They
They
advised
do
us
have
this
them.
year,
They have
yes, that
executed
they each
agreements.
have a
Okay.
purse agreement.
Okay. Okay. I wasn't sure if they. I
But
know
you're,
they-
you're
Yes, they
okay
do.
with the change that we've made to leave them, to not
Oh,
require that the
absolutely, yeah,
person.
I think that that's appropriate, so the racing wouldn't stop if they didn't happen to have it done, and that's happened for a couple of years now, where that hasn't been done. At the
Correct.
beginning, it was done during a meet, correct?
Right, correct.
Yeah. Yes.
What you mentioned that the comments we received were from both groups of horsemen, including also tracks relative to the purse agreement, or it was just from horse people?
Most of our comments were from the thoroughbred and both groups. The standardbreds didn't provide comments.
Okay.
But the thoroughbred folks were adamant that they wanted the right to move forward. And there have been, as Dr. Lightbaum said, there have been years where they have moved forward with the meet and didn't have a purse agreement at the start. My original thinking was that might be helpful to have that requirement, but they were very clear that it was not helpful to them to have that. So, we take their opinion on that.
And the default is whatever monies, without a purse agreement, whatever monies flow from our discretion and based on their petition goes to purses.
It goes to the licensee. It goes into an account for the benefit of the horsemen, but what will get paid out is the purses, and anything that's not paid out in purses will have to sit there until they agree on what's going to happen.
Right.
So it won't go to the horsemen automatically, and it doesn't go to the track either. So they will have to come to a purse agreement at some point to.
But it doesn't put anybody at a disadvantage from a negotiating perspective.
No, it shouldn't.
When it comes to the purse agreement.
That's right.
And I know that was the initial intention, to try to
Okay. Commissioner Cameron?
So,
move.
I'll do that, Mr. Chair. I move the commission to approve the amended small business impact statement and final amendments to 205 CMR 149 as included in the packet, and authorize the staff to take steps necessary to file the amended regulation with the Secretary of the Commonwealth and complete the regulation promulgation process.
Second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously.
Thank you.
Our next item on the agenda is the approval of 2 new racing officials for Plain Ridge Racecourse. Tony Salerno, who's been their presiding judge for several years, got an offer to work in his home state. So although we're very sad to see him leave, we're very happy for him personally that he'll have this opportunity. And I just want to let everybody know from our staff standpoint, he's been wonderful to work with. In his place, Plain Ridge would like to have Anne Marie Mancini approved. You've already approved her as a racing official earlier this year as a clerk of course, chart writer. She also was approved last year as a substitute judge for Tony. So she's been in that position before, and she is accredited. So she's already been through our background check and is good that way. So if you approve her, she's set to go. And then to replace her, Plain Ridge would like to have Catherine Beedlove approved as clerk of course chart writer, and she's been in the industry a long time also, and has been doing this job down at Pompano.
So that was, the only issue there would be the completion of the background investigation.
Correct. She hasn't been through the complete background check yet, so we would be approving her on completion of background check.
But
Yeah,
obviously, you need the people in these positions right now.
Sorry, Commissioner, I can't hear you.
Whoop, sorry, but you need the people in these positions right now.
Pardon?
You need these people in those positions
Yes,
right
yeah.
now.
We're hoping that one of them might start next week, and it might be a week or two before the other one starts.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think we're fortunate that Ms. Mancini is accredited, so that really works, because that really was one of our, that was important to us, to have
Yes.
accredited officials, so that, I know she was a good addition when she filled in last year, so I certainly believe we should approve these recommendations.
Okay,
Ready for a motion?
motion,
Yep.
Commissioner?
So, so I move that the commission approve Anne Marie Mancini as the presiding judge and approve Catherine Breedlove as clerk of course chart writer pending her satisfactory completion of licensure by the Massachusetts Gaming Commission Racing Division and satisfactory completion of her background check by the Massachusetts State Police.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously.
So the third item on the agenda is a request by Plain Ridge for the ability to offer a minimum 10-cent wagers on certain exotic bets. This is something that came into the industry back in 2004. I believe Hinsdale, the Greyhound track in New Hampshire, was the first one to do it, and it caught on since then. Included in the packet is when the State Racing Commission approved this for Suffolk Downs back in 2007. So they've been doing it for quite a while and have had success with it. It's a nice way of being able to bet a number of horses with a small amount of money. If you do a superfecta, which is where you have to pick the first 4 horses in order, if you do a box, which allows different combinations, with a $1 bet, it would be a $24 bet total. With the 10-cent betting, it's $2.40. So if somebody has some change left in their pocket at the end of the day, and there's a superfecta, it's a great way of getting them in winning. And also, I've heard that the bettors that spend the higher amounts of money enjoy it also, because you can cover a large number of horses.
And Mr. O'Toole, you've never offered this before?
No, we made a decision years ago to stick with the traditional dollar. Well, we did come down from $2 to $1 when a lot of the exotics were, when people like to box trifectas and superfectas, we did come down to $1. And then we stayed there traditionally. This is kind of the way that it's been going, and I think we're a little preoccupied over the last few years.
You're a little preoccupied, did you say?
And now, you know, we kind of see the industry trends. We also have, the USDA also has a guaranteed pool that they put out there for certain wagers, and a lot of those wagers need a lower minimum in order to participate in those, so we want to take advantage of those opportunities as well. And, and Alex put it pretty well. Obviously, you get paid out at a fraction of the pool. You don't get the, you don't get what the $2 bettors put into the pool, but it generates a lot of interest because boxing, it's $24 instead of $2.40 to box a super, and you can throw an added horse in there as well. Brings it up incrementally, but the bettors like it, and we're taking them now at Plainridge because tracks like Gulfstream offer them. So if their jurisdiction offers them, we're taking the 10-cent wagers at our track right now, just not on our live product because we never individually got it approved by the commission.
Does Penn use this at some of their properties?
Yes.
They do.
I suppose there's a bit of a parallel to some of the slot machine trends that where the denomination has gone down, but the combinations are such that you could be effectively betting $5 on a 1-cent denomination because the permutations are many more than what would be seemingly the regular slot machine.
On my way over from my office to the back offices at the casino, I walk by the penny slot machines all the time. I've never seen one say 1 cent for a wager. They say more than 1 cent because of the different lines that they use, but it's the exact same.
It's the same analogy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Why would one be resistant to it? Why didn't you adopt it back in 07 or 08, 09
regulation
when people were?
It was a thought process at the time.
Okay. All right. Well put. Tell me later.
And if I could just weigh in 1 second on my name. I was telling Janice that my brother was known for my whole life as O'Malley. And how that came about, I have no idea, but I imagine when he was small, someone called him O'Malley. But as I think you know that I played hockey when I was a kid, and I've been threatening for the last 4 or 5 years to exercise more and maybe put the skates back on. So last July 4th, I put the skates on in the summer, and I got into a league that plays on Monday nights. And when I walked into the locker room, there was 3 Canadian fellas that come from Waltham that play on my team. And so I was introduced as Steve O'Toole, and there was one kind of crusty Canadian, and he has a lot to say about everybody's play and everything, and kind of harasses the guys. And he never, ever called me O'Toole. He always called me O'Reilly, O'Neill, O'Malley, O'Donnell, okay, no matter what. I get in the corner more, O'Donnell. So I just thought he was that was his way of harassing me. So through the course of playing, of course, everybody's occupation comes out. They find out that I'm over at the casino, and pointed out that I'm on the racing part of the casino. But him and his wife go to the casino, and they like to play, and they would go to all the casinos. I'm coming down to your place, and so he visited, and the machines don't pay out enough, and all the standard complaints, and I'd hear from him, hey, O'Flynn, you got to get your machines to play out more. So I said, look, next time you come to the casino, look me up, and have dinner with you or whatever. So yeah, I will. So I went to a game, and he said, hey, O'Brien. He said, I was at your place the other day. I asked for you, and nobody knew who you were. And I said, really? I said, who did you ask? And he said, well, I walked up to the guy with the gold jacket on, and which is the security podium. And he said, and I asked for you, and they didn't know who you were. And I said, well, who did you ask for? And he said, Steve O'Brien. So the whole time he was never busted in my chops. He really didn't know my name was O'Toole, I guess.
And then you thought that he was in cahoots with Janice to set up our agenda. Great. All right. Anything else? Do we need?
Yeah, we do.
Do we need to vote?
And
Okay. Sorry.
Again,
I
Mr.
lost
Chair,
track.
I recommend, or rather I move that the commission approve the request of Plainridge Park Casino to offer minimum 10-cent wagers on certain exotic wagers.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously.
One last question of Mr. O'Toole. Did you have a full...
O'Brien.
Did you have a full house for the Kentucky Derby with simulcast?
We had a very good crowd. We parked employees up in the new Horseman's Lot, so it opened up parking, so there was, it accommodated that well. We were up on Friday, Kentucky Oaks Day, we were up 12%, and for the Derby, we were up 19%, which we were really happy about.
Great. Was there spillover into the casino?
Well, personally, I noticed it, but on the figures the next day, food and beverage, Slacks was packed for the entire day, because I go by there a lot, and from what I've been told, Flutie's was packed as well. As far as the floor, it seemed like there was a good crowd all day, and it was across. It seemed to be a cross flow of people up and down the ramp all day long, but it was a very good crowd all day.
Good.
Started early in the morning.
Great.
That's great.
I think that's it. Sir, anything else?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right, we are
Thank you.
adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.